Hey, Mao, everybody. It's Thursday. You know what that means? Do you
Meow
know what
or
that?
meow?
Hey, Meow. It means that Trump is going to go to a National Association of Black Journalists and answer
Mm.
some questions. You know what? You do have to give Trump a lot of credit for this, right? He walks directly into the lion's den and is like, ask away.
Yeah, this is kind of an internet age thing, isn't it? Where it's
Yes.
like, I'm not going to run away from my detractors. I think Kamala Harris is doing the Biden strategy, right? She's like, "Oh,
The
I don't
hide in the
want to
basement.
I don't want to scuff the paint. I got to leave the
Mm.
car in the garage, okay? Don't want to risk an accident."
Uh-huh. So,
And Trump
yeah,
is just like, "Demolition derby."
right, right. Put the pedal on metal. So this is super interesting. You guys probably saw maybe clips of this yesterday. There's a couple clips of this. Um, there's some stuff in here that I think Trump answers very well, kind of shockingly well, considering what we talked about yesterday, where he was, I was criticizing Trump's inability to answer some of the questions about the controversial things he said and like clearly articulate what he's talking about. And yet in this thing, he gives a really great answer, but then I think he kind of ruins it. I think he's kind of ruining it because the media, like if you Google search this event, they only talk about one part of it. They only talk about one part of it. And I don't think that's the part you want to be focused on. Do you know what
Yeah,
part I'm
where
talking
the
about?
part where he steps in it, right?
Right. Well, the
Where
part where
he
he's like saying like, is Kamala Harris black? Question
right.
mark.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So
Yeah, look, he's got to work. Oh, this is so funny in the context of a like black event, right? Because this is what the commonly people in the black community say this all the time. They say, look, we have to work three times as hard, right? Just to compete with white people. We're black. We have to compete harder, right? Doesn't
mhm.
Trump have to compete like three times harder because the entire news media is against him? Like he can't make one mistake because that's going to be the headline.
um, I guess. I mean, this isn't.
Look, Sitch is like, nope,
Well, no, no,
nope.
no. What I was gonna say is that this is Trump is kind of an unusual situation because before Trump, this is kind of the way it was for all presidential candidates
Hmm.
and even the VP candidates. They'd be like down their throat if they'd said something kind of crazy. But with Trump, he is sort of like he has that like times 10 because he's Trump. So,
So let me reword this here and see if I can get some agreement out of you. So if Kamala does an event like this, right, and she
mhm.
steps in it 50 times, but she gets one thing right, how is the media going to report that? Are they going
They
to
would,
report the 50 missteps? Or are they going to report, oh, Kamala did a fantastic job and run the clip of where she got it right the one time?
well, you're not gonna like my answer. It would depend on what the missteps were, honestly. But I'm not gonna give you the clean, like, oh, of course, they're all just gonna bow down and suck, Kamala's,
Mm-hmm.
wang, right?
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see going forward what she says. She's still kind of doing, as you were saying, she's kind of doing the hiding strategy compared to Trump, who's out there. So it's hard to tell at first. Obviously, we haven't seen like the media is still totally fine covering for racism as long as it's racism from the left. So obviously, if she says anything like that, that won't get a lot of coverage.
Do what media organizations do you think are will be unbiased like this? I mean, I'm just curious. It's maybe I don't I'm
It's
not.
not a question of being unbiased. Okay, I'm sorry. It's not a question of being unbiased, and people forget this. For like whenever again, Trump is unusual. Okay. But if you
Mhm.
go back and you look at other presidential races, whenever the presidential candidate or VP says something that's like weird, like they get a bunch of press about it. This was happening to Joe Biden when he was VP for Barack. This is like people forget this because it's so long ago. Joe Biden, before he was president, he had a reputation for saying stupid shit.
Right.
And that came up a lot when Obama was running in 2008. Like, oh, Joe Biden said some crazy shit. And that came up, with the Mitt Romney comment, they're going to put you back in chains. That got like press for a week. Like Joe Biden said that, black people are going to be put in chains by Mitt Romney.
Okay. Well, I'm just talking
So
about the context of this election.
right, no,
Trump
so but that's
versus
why
Kamala
right, that's why
Harris.
I said with Trump, because he's so hated by the press, it does change the calculations, right? So I would agree with
Right.
you specifically with Trump. I'm
Well,
just
that's
saying
all I'm
overall,
saying is with
okay,
Trump.
right,
I'm not saying like the news media is uniquely against Republicans. I mean, Republicans make that argument all the time, but I think Trump is unique in that he is calling out the media explicitly and, calling them names, and like he never went to the press corps dinner. Like he's basically had a fuck you attitude towards the entire news media. And the news media is like, oh, okay, you want to play it that way. So now they're completely biased with him. So
right.
I do think the analysis that, Trump, if Trump gets one steps in it once and gets 50 things right, they're going to report the one time he
But
stepped in it, and
I
vice versa for Kamala
I
Harris. I
agree,
think that's like,
I agree with you in regarding Trump. If he steps in it once, they will.
well,
That's
that's,
what the story will be. But to
yeah.
answer the other question with Kamala, I said it depends what when you say she steps in it, it depends what that looks like. If it's something woke, then the media will not cover it because the media is totally blind. The left media is completely blind to the racism and the horribleness of woke shit.
What is something that she might step in that they would report,
I
just
don't.
out of
I can't
curiosity?
think of an example off the top of my head.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking for that. I'm
But I mean, the
looking
same thing
for
with
the media
remember the
reporting.
Hillary. I mean, the Hillary deplorables comment got a lot of press from the normal media too.
It did, yeah.
So
Look, and I would be willing to bet if Kamala Harris said something like the deplorables comment, they would have learned from their mistake, and they would hide that shit as much as they could. Like it's so obvious. Everyone but Fox News wants Kamala to win.
yes,
It's obvious. It's completely
yes,
obvious. The news media is dead. It's
hmm,
completely dead. The idea of objective journalism is gone. And look, we're going to see a perfect example of it right here in the beginning question.
yeah,
This
that's
beginning
true.
question, this woman is so like dishonestly biased. And it's probably systemic dishonesty. She thinks she's a hard-hitting, speaking truth to power journalist. But there's no way she's going to ask these questions to Kamala Harris. That's a dream.
Hmm.
That's a dream world.
Well,
It would be
he's
great. Look, if she did ask these kind of hard hitting questions to Kamala, I'd be like, fantastic. Let's really put these people through the ringer. But that's not what's going to happen.
you know Trump says in this that Kamala was supposed to like participate in this,
Yes.
and I was like looking for this. Did they mean like later?
No, she was
Like,
supposed to show up in this event, I believe. And
but did she ever respond to any of this? Did she ever? When did she participate? I could not find any video of her participating via Zoom call or in person at this event at
she,
all.
my read, and look, I just listened to it, but what from
Hmm.
what Trump says, and if, obviously, if Trump could not be correct here, but he makes it sound like she was supposed to be there with him,
Right.
and that's the only reason why he agreed to do it.
Yes, that's what he makes it sound like. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, and I heard later reporting on this that she, after this went viral, agreed to come and speak to them.
Okay. Oh, so
So
she
at a
hasn't done it
later
yet.
date,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because there are questions that I mean, I don't think they're going to ask them, but their questions would be like, the equity thing, the BLM stuff,
Yeah, we'll
her,
cover it. We'll cover all
yeah,
these
her,
softball questions.
her position as attorney general in California, and some of the bad things she's accused of doing there. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things to ask in that regards.
Yeah. It's
So.
worse than softball. It's Nerf ball. They're not
Well,
even
those
like
aren't those
us.
aren't softball questions if they ask those questions.
No, no. The questions you want them to ask, that's great. Those are
Right.
hardball questions. Those are not going to be asked. The questions that are going to be asked are Nerf ball questions. Like,
Probably.
what
Probably.
was it like meeting Megan the Stallion? That's the kind of questions they're going to ask her. Get ready.
Uh-huh.
It's fascinating. Trump comes in and it's like policy, 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 right? Kamala comes in and it's like just fluff. It's all about just social
It's not
stuff.
really
Oh,
policy. Trump, he doesn't talk about policy. He talks about issues and says
hmm,
this is an issue that people care about, which is true. I don't know if I'd
right.
really call that like policy because he just says like we're gonna fix it, and you're like, okay, I don't know how they're gonna fix, it, but they're gonna fix it.
Wasn't the Black Jobs thing 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign? I feel like
Was
that
it?
was
I don't remember that.
yeah, the whole immigration is hurting the black community. Low income jobs, taking low income jobs from the black community.
Well, I
I feel like that
know
was a Bernie Sanders talking point.
there were clips I think of Bernie Sanders and maybe even Joe Biden, like I don't know, like years ago, like in 2000 or earlier, talking about how too much immigration and specifically too much illegal immigration would hurt the black community and those in lower income jobs.
Yes.
And so there were clips of that. Yes.
Yeah, I don't it's funny that she stings him on the black jobs thing because like I hate stereotypes, obviously. So the whole idea of black jobs offends me, but also I'm equally offended by the white privilege stuff, which
Hmm.
completely gets a pass. Like some silly white woman can go on some Kamala live stream and talk about white privilege for hours, just
Right.
completely unchallenged.
Well, let's right. We've been
Yeah,
gabbing
okay,
too
let's
long.
get
Let's get
into it,
into this.
obviously.
But right before we get into it, I want to say there's a clip. I put it on Twitter. This proves that Donald Trump watches our stream.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So someone had messaged me and they said, "Listen, the tack that Trump should use is fake, phony. He should use that attack against Kamala Harris." And we talked about it. And what happened that very day? Trump starts using fake and phony to attack Kamala Harris. So obviously, the only explanation is that Donald Trump watches our show. That's the only explanation. There's no other explanation for it.
Of course. That's going to really hurt us. People
Really hurt you.
now all the accusations are going to be even worse now that Trump officially watches the show.
True, true. Anyway, let's start it.
Rachel Scott, BBC. Thank you. How are you?
Look at her. Oh, she's getting ready for the attack. Look at that face. She's like, "Yes, been waiting for this moment."
How are you?
She said, "Ugh." Look at that face.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort.
That's totally unfair. Such an unfair claim.
So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country. Including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money, they were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. and then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was
Mr. President,
wrong.
I would love
I think
if
it's
you can
a
answer the
very
question
nasty
on your rhetoric
question.
and why you
I
believe
have
that
answered
black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another
I
4
have
years.
been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other.
So almost a perfect answer. I think he should have left out the Lincoln part, because that would be an easy thing for like the media to just focus on that and ignore the rest of the question. Very good. Besides that, very good answer. Doesn't get mad. It's just like, you're being very fucking rude to me. But saying it in a very calm way. You're super rude. I was super nice. I showed up, you guys lied to me and you were completely unprofessional, blah, 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 blah. Totally like great response, right? And I think if it wasn't for the Kamala Black comment, I think would be like the moment that you would see clipped everywhere, that you would see kind of put all over the place would be this. And I think the media might try to spin it like negative, like, oh, look at Trump berating like a black journalist. But you'd watch the clip and you'd be like, oh, like he's totally justified for doing that.
I do not believe there's any way in hell that this clip would be spread. No, not even fathomable in my estimation.
If it wasn't for the black comment, I disagree. I think this is the clip that would go everywhere.
They can't spread this clip because it plays into the black stereotype of being late. It's just impossible.
Oh,
this is a terrible clip.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious.
They can't spread it. It's impossible.
No, I don't know.
This is an entirely black journalist conference that starts 35 minutes late.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Look, it's impossible for this clip to go viral. The media is conscious about spreading negative stereotypes.
You're right. I guess, yeah, maybe. Okay.
No, can't be done.
Other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a definition
the
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question, a very direct question.
Define it for me, if you would.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe
this is like comedy gold here.
How come he says black? Like, he puts such a weird emphasis on it. He's like,
black.
He puts that like weird little emphasis like at the end. Like, I don't know. It's funny though.
My read of it is it's
like a troll.
Well, no, he doesn't necessarily know how to say black without it being offensive. So he's kind of like, it's uncertainty of using this word. That's my read of it. But
yeah, but I would agree with you, except that he says it again and again and again, which makes it feel like it's like an intentional troll, which I think is funny. But
yeah, I look, and she gets him on the black job thing, which is coming up in a second here. And when this came out, I kept thinking, does this make Trump more sympathetic with white voters who are living in this cultural environment where they feel terrified to even talk about these topics without being labeled a racist? And that's
Right.
like kind of exactly what they do to him. Like he just says black job, something people in the media talk about all the time.
Right.
But all of a sudden he says it and he's tarred as a racist. So I could see people, you know, feeling the same sort of cultural pressure at work where, you know, are they going to step in it talking about racial things that only the left seems to be able to talk about
Yeah.
without being tarred
Right.
and feathered. Is that going to make Trump more sympathetic? What is your take?
Um. Hmm.
It's a tough one, huh? You think about it
It
a
is
little.
because like there's like this weird thing that happens where like there could be a phrase that's like fine, everyone knows what it means, like black jobs or whatever. And all of a sudden the media one day just says, "Oh, you're not allowed to say that and you're like a bad person or a bigot if you say that."
Yes.
And
Yep.
like people will just switch over on a dime because but usually it's the people that already want to believe like that they don't like Trump already. Right. So they're all going to switch on a dime. I don't know if like people that are undecided or independents, they might be a little bit more sympathetic to it, like you're saying. They're like, well, I
That's
thought, like, what are we talking about here?
this is a war for those independents. That's why I was thinking, does this make
Right.
him more sympathetic with independents who are like, yeah, I brought up black jobs at work and everyone's calling me racist.
Right. Right.
And they're thinking, oh, fuck that. I'm going to vote for Trump.
I
I'm
think
not going to tell anyone at work I'm going to vote for Trump, but I am.
right. Well, I think the left and the media, like really focusing on the black jobs, is a big tactical error and mistake on their end. I don't think it's particularly effective at doing anything except galvanizing their own base,
Right. Yeah.
which maybe is what they want, but
I think somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some
I
Republicans
really
have
don't know.
said?
I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length, and we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well,
interview.
you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look,
This is super smart. Reaching out to the friendly host, just
yes.
tossing her aside and saying, oh, yeah, look over here. Here's a black woman who likes me.
Is that
She's
what's
on
her
Fox
first name?
News. Yeah.
She worked for George W. Bush.
Something Harris. I don't, that's
Um,
not Condoleezza Rice. No.
Oh, it's
And
not.
how dare you?
I guess I'm
How
a
dare you
racist.
commit a racist?
I did. Yeah, for some reason I thought it was Condoleezza Harris.
Condoleezza Rice
Yeah.
was Secretary of State for
She
George
sounds like
W.
her,
Bush.
doesn't she? She's
No.
like that same. Okay, well, I guess I'm just a
No,
racist.
not at all. Yeah.
Okay. But this, I think Trump's direction here. I really think that this whole is Kamala black is a huge mistake. This is a huge mistake. This is not going to win anything for Trump. It's such a blunder, in my opinion, in my estimation. This is not going to get swing voters. It's not going to get independents. They're going to look at Kamala and be like, well, she's dark skinned. They're going to assume she's black or something. And they're just going to be like, this is a weird. They're just going to be like, this is fucking weird. It's going to play directly into the weird thing.
Right. I don't think Kamala is dark skinned at all. I think she could pass as Caucasian. So
what?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean,
what the fuck are you talking about?
I don't think Kamala Harris codes as black at all. Look, every single woman on this stage has way darker skin than Kamala Harris. So
I mean, there's light skinned black people. I don't.
I know this. Yes, I understand that. I do understand that.
If you look at Kamala, I would think she's some kind of mixed race person, but I wouldn't think she's just like a random white lady.
I think she looks Latino more than she does black or Indian.
She might, but the reason like a lot of Latino people is because they have like mixed native blood.
I mean, it's who cares? I mean, I don't. I
care.
would
No, but
prefer
that's
an
my
election. I
that's
would
my
prefer an
point.
election that didn't focus on race.
I
at
agree
all.
with you,
Yes.
and that's my point. Is that I think I think Trump saying that she's not. Which, by the way, I don't even know if that's true. If it could be true that Kamala didn't really focus on the fact that she's half black. and that she was
until it
focusing more.
became politically expedient.
Right. Until it became beneficial. She might not have focused on any of that whatsoever. Might have just focused on her Indian heritage. And that's, gross that she's doing that. But it's just a complete fucking strategic blunder to fixate on that. I think much better is to use fake, phony, because then fake and phony kind of like implies that maybe, like it kind of has that built into it without you having to be so direct and to call it out. It is not a winning strategy. And he even posted today. He put some posts up of like Kamala's family and
I saw
the Indian side of her family. And he's like, "Thank you, Kamala, for the nice picture you sent me from many years ago. Your warm friendship and love of your Indian heritage are very much appreciated." And it's so bad. It plays directly into like the racist hand. It's the left is just going to run wild with it. And he's just going to lose more and more, independence with this like weird rhetoric.
Yeah, I don't know if he picks up black voters, though. That's a question that I had.
That's what he probably thinks. I'm super skeptical.
Yeah, I don't know because, I mean, it is kind of offensive if you're a black voter and she's pandering to you. Like, she doesn't even really. I mean, I hear this all the time when I listen to, you see black Twitter, you listen to black the black community live streams, and they'll talk about people who are not really black, right? Look at FD Signifier talks about this stuff all the time. That person isn't really black, right? So I don't know if it's an effective strategy to pin that on Kamala when, like, Kamala's numbers, and I saw a poll on this recently, are super low with the black community by comparison to Barack Obama. Like, it's half what it was with Barack Obama.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's just recognition, probably.
Maybe, but look, I don't know if that's the one thing. Because look, my intuition is exactly the same as yours. Like, this doesn't play with white voters. They're going to be like, why are we doing this? Right. But I don't know if it plays with black voters, and black voters. I mean, the Democratic Party needs those black voters just to be competitive. And if it peels off 10% of the black voters, then maybe it's genius. If you lose 10% of the white voters, obviously it's a wash. But
this is why, listen, he should have picked Tim Scott. He could have had Tim Scott going out there.
I don't know why. Look, I don't know why he didn't. Why he didn't. Or Carrie Lake. I think Carrie Lake is white, but she's darker than Kamala Harris.
I don't know if she's darker than Kamala Harris, but
now we have to bring up pictures.
There is an issue, and this came up with Obama, where some black people who are of American, like continental American lineage will get like mad that people that are black but from the Caribbean or South or Central America get like lumped into the same category as them, or black people from like Africa, like recently from Africa. And this was kind of an issue that came up a little bit with Obama, and I guess comes up a little bit with Kamala because her lineage is Jamaican, half Indian. So that could come up, but I don't think that's something that like Trump should be addressing himself.
I agree. The 10%, or it's descendants of American black slaves, but I don't know the acronym. They have a fancy acronym for it now. So,
right.
Anyway.
I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we were divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And
Mr. President,
they're
can I-
taking the employment.
What does he mean there? So any job could be a black job, I guess you say.
I don't know. That's a bad answer. It's a really bad answer.
Anybody who has a job, that's a black job.
Yeah.
I don't like the black job thing because immediately you're like, that's like a low status. Like it just screams, black jobs are low status jobs, right?
It does. It does. But then his answer is even worse because it kind of, he's not saying it, but it sounds like it has some like weird vibe to it, like something about black people not having jobs, right?
Right.
Like even though it's not what he
Yes.
said, it just gives off that vibe. So it was a bad. I mean, there's a way to articulate it, very neutrally. Say like, oh well, jobs that statistically on average, black Americans fulfill, right, or something to that effect.
A black job is any job that you don't need white privilege to obtain.
There you go.
How
Perfect.
about that?
That'd be like a good like reversal. Yeah.
No, it's too complicated.
Away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country, and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs, and frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions, from prisons, from jails. They're gang members in other countries. Other countries are setting loose their prisoners. They're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers, gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way, their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Mr. President?
Okay, I want to ask you, do you think people are more likely to vote on these aesthetic issues, like Trump said it incorrectly, he said black jobs, or are they more likely to vote on the policy? Like there's a clear policy distinction here between the two candidates.
Well, again, it's hard. We have to, who are we focusing on, right? Are we focusing
Voters.
on, no, but I mean, like, we're focusing on undecided voters? Are we focusing on turning out the base? Right? Because I think those are a little different.
Any voters?
I think the base gets turned out more by rhetoric. I think undecided voters, I don't know if there's a clear answer to that.
Right. Well,
Like,
look,
obviously,
I think
if you're living in an area where there's a lot of immigration or illegal immigration, and you have those stories about like, oh, well, like they had to house illegal immigrants in a school because they had to wait for their asylum trials or whatever, like, then yeah, obviously that policy is going to be more impactful on you specifically as a person.
right. So you're going to be more interested in voting on the policy than the aesthetic of how
Right.
the campaign
But if you
was
don't
run.
live in one of those areas,
Right. You're going to
then-
default to aesthetic. That's a good
yes.
good
Right.
split, I think. Yeah. This is one of the things that's interesting about the elections, because you kind of get a clear picture of how much is this illegal immigration really impacting people. Obviously, Trump thinks it's impacting most people to the point where he's just betting his whole campaign on it. He's saying, this is my issue right here. And Democrats are even doing kind of this weird thing I've seen where they're saying, oh yeah, we care about immigration and the border as well, and it's the Republicans that stopped us from the immigration, which I think is a good way to maintain the base, people who might defect over to the Republican Party if the immigration issue is affecting them, because then they can say, oh, well, the Democrats wanted to fix the immigration issue too, but the mean old Republicans stopped them. So I can
Right.
still vote Democrat and the immigration issue will be solved. It kind of takes it off the table. I don't know that that's the case. Like, that's a completely separate question. Like, if immigration is something you're is affecting you and you want to see dealt with, who do you think is more likely to succeed at dealing with it, Republicans or Democrats? That's a completely separate issue. I think I would lean towards Republicans, but
yeah, I would agree. And you brought up a good point, which is that so when the Democrats tried to pass that law and then it got blocked for political reasons, like that provides a good talking
cover,
point, a good excuse, a good cover for people that are more left leaning to not abandon ship. But if you're talking about someone, right? If we're talking about someone who is, an undecided, independent, or whatever, who probably, if they care about immigration, my estimation be that they're voting more on a vibe as opposed to a specific policy. Then they would definitely go if they're going to vote for immigration, they're definitely going to say, well, the Republican vibe definitely comes off as way more like we need to lock down the border. But the Democrats' vibe does not come across like that at all whatsoever. And they're terrified of using strong rhetoric on the border because they don't want to get hit with the racist stick. And like Trump always hits the immigration stick because like the immigration stick is the Republicans or the right's version of the Democrats' racist stick, and it's the right's version of the Democrats' threat to democracy stick. Like that's, the Democrats are like, oh, you have to be afraid of threat to democracy and racism. Like, these are the two big issues you have to be worried about. The Republicans are like immigration and crime, and then inflation and crime kind of underneath it, but like smaller than immigration, at least in terms of how Trump is messaging it. I think he should focus more on inflation. But
yeah, totally.
But this plays directly into my definition of left versus right. Trump plays directly into that every time he opens his mouth, because that's why he always hits the immigration stick.
The internal, external line.
Because immigration is the external threat, like coming in and fucking up your country. Or at least the perception of it is.
Right. And the internal threat is racism.
Yep.
I want to get into how you address some of the issues with black communities. And I say that plural because we live in communities of color that are different. We're not.
God bless this woman. God bless you.
Yes.
Not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same. It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk about something that bursts, and this is the weight of the inflation on this country right now. The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single black moms, when you look statistically. How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, this woman was unable to get the right equipment. But it's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear every other word.
Do you like how he plays?
I do. I love it. I do love it.
It's like, oh, she must be somehow at fault for the technical problem.
Because this woman bought the wrong equipment and couldn't hook it up correctly.
This random journalist. That's pretty funny.
Well, she did go first.
That's true.
It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating. And if you just take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country. and it's destroying the black community probably as much
So
or
what
more
do you do?
than any
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls, and then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, you know, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight, a prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing what you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him, and now we have to steer toward him. But ultimately it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker, the black population, and every other population within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
President, can I ask?
So I think, you know, it's interesting. I think the way to talk about the black jobs thing from listening to him talk would be to say, instead of saying like immigrants are coming and taking black jobs, you should be like, immigrants are coming and illegal immigrants are coming into the country and they're taking away jobs from Americans. They're taking away American jobs, and that includes black Americans, right?
Yeah, that's much better.
That'd be a way to kind of circumvent that. But no, I mean, I think Trump, I think it's a very good answer, even though it's not obviously that heavy in policy, except for, you know, drill baby drill, which would be the implication, right? Which has some impact. I mean, that all that stuff takes years to materialize, so it's not going to have like a short-term effect on inflation. But I do think it's very smart, and I think besides immigration, I do think Trump should really, really, from a strategic perspective, really push the inflation button, because that is Biden and Harris's weakest, in my opinion, their weakest area besides immigration, is just their inability to acknowledge like inflation, and their inability to, like, what the fuck is the plan? Like, I have no clue what Kamala Harris has even said about inflation. I don't know what the fuck is she even given a plan on how to fight inflation whatsoever? You know, you get she gets saddled with Biden pretending inflation didn't exist for 4 years.
Yeah, a good counter would be to go against the policy of forgiving student debt, because obviously forgiving student debt, like when the students pay back their loans, that shrinks the money supply. That fights inflation. But the Democrats are not willing to do that. They're giving these tax breaks to basically kids that can afford to go to college. So, or kids that will be able to, because they're coming out of college with a college degree, will be able to pay back those student loans. They should be the highest earners in America. Why are they getting tax breaks?
Right.
Causing inflation. So that would be a good hit.
Yeah. But see, I don't even know if you have, like, the average person, not saying the average person, like 98% of the population, okay, when there's some kind of problem, especially something economic, people aren't going to really know what the answer is. But but they'll trust if there's a politician that they like who says, I identify that this thing that you're talking about is an issue, and I either will get a solution, or I'll either propose a solution here, or I'll just get the best experts to figure out a solution. And Biden and Harris just not even like addressing or identifying inflation is like such a fucking mistake. It's such a massive gaslight that I think is so devastating to their ability to run, and Biden's ability to run. And it's interesting because right now Harris, and we've kind of talked about this, Harris is coasting currently on like nothing, not like policy, but just a vibe. just an aesthetic, just a vibe that,
Yep.
she's not Biden. Biden is dying and old and enfeebled. I don't know if you saw Biden give a speech the other day and it was like, holy shit, it was even worse. Like he's just getting worse and worse and
Oh
worse.
my God, he's
Like insane.
deteriorating.
Yeah, he's like melting before our eyes. And she's just skating by on this vibe. I don't I don't think this vibe, the Kamala vibe, is going to last
Oh, it's not.
to
Nope.
November.
Nope.
She's gonna have to start producing something more substantive at some point.
Yep.
And I guess we'll find out when the rubber meets the road whether she'll be able to do that in some kind of, you know, what's the word? Some kind of way that influences voters in a persuasive way.
It is interesting to me that he zeroed in on the interest rates being high
Yeah.
because many economists believe that high interest rates are what's causing the inflation because our debt is so high that it's creating these giant interest payments on the national debt, which are basically money drops like any stimulus into the economy, and that's expanding the money supply. So lowering interest rates, I think, would be a giant inflation fighting tool. And he did kind of hint at we need to get interest rates down. It would be nicer if he'd come out explicitly and say, I'm for getting interest rates down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just thinking in terms of things that will fight inflation. Getting interest rates will fight inflation, and also stopping these paying off people's student loans.
Well,
When a loan is made, that creates money. That basically expands the money supply. And when you pay the loan back, you're paying back the debt that contracts the money supply. So all of this student loan forgiveness is basically just saying, okay, it's like the government making payments to students to go to school and just they never have to pay that back. That money stays in the economy. Yeah.
right. I think, and I hate to harp on this, but I think this would be like the 10D chess move for Trump would be to, whenever he talks about the economy and talks about inflation, he should specifically say Joe Biden, Kamala Harris are lying to the American people about inflation. They have no plan for inflation. They have no plan to fight inflation. They cause inflation. They have no plan to fight inflation. They have no plan for the economy. And just say that again and again and again, because that would force Harris to actually create a response to that.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
to create a response to that. And I would almost guarantee that the response would be something retarded. It'd be like, my response to fight inflation is to give a bunch of people money. Right?
Money. Exactly.
Something very stupid like that.
Stimulus spending. That'll fight inflation.
Right.
What we need to fight this inflation is more government spending.
Yep.
Ask you another question
Yes,
that is also impacting Black Americans.
And that's very clear now. Good.
I'm sorry?
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, someone from Illinois, an unarmed Black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You've said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water, right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either.
Okay.
But again, why would...
Are they going to be charging the officer? I guess they're charging the officer.
So why should he receive immunity?
Well, he might not. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens. I'm talking about people that are much different cases than that. We need people to protect ourselves. And by the way, in Chicago, as an example, a few weeks ago, July 4th weekend, they had 117 shootings and 17 deaths. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
So can you get a little more specific back to the immunity question? Who would make those
Well, right now, for the most part, people are protected by their unions, by their police unions, or by their police departments. But I'm saying if I felt, or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime, or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake. But if somebody made an innocent mistake, I would want to help that person.
What would those exceptions be? What would determine
you
an
go
innocent
after
mistake?
somebody and it's a very close call and it's very dangerous, and they have the policeman's life and woman is a very difficult thing, because sometimes you have less than a second to make a life and death decision, and sometimes very bad decisions are made. They're not made from an evil standpoint, but they're made from the standpoint of they made a mistake.
So I want to follow up really quickly.
So how do you feel about this answer? I think it's a really bad answer.
Yeah,
I think
it's not great. I mean, the question is not a great question either, just because it's like this in this particular case. I mean, maybe this case was a corruption case, and I don't know the extent of Trump's policies. Trump throws these policies out a lot of times, and I'm not certain he knows the extent of them. They just sound good, right? So
Right,
I haven't really
right.
looked into this immunity thing.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know exactly either what he was suggesting. I mean, I heard a clip of him just talking about it, but it was kind of vague as to what
Right.
I think it's a weird policy. I don't know if he's like really trying to appeal to the police unions or something in the city, or just this is like a way to talk about crime. I don't, it's not like we've heard stories after stories of, police wrongly getting prosecuted, that they need some kind of criminal immunity for these actions as opposed to just a normal court, adjudication process. And the example and his answer is really bad. Like, no one's really focusing on the question or the answer because they're focusing on the Kamala Black part. But the answer he gave is really bad because he basically just said, in a kind of a vague way, that unless you could prove malice, unless you could prove intention, that the police officer is not just negligent, but is intentionally doing something criminal or wrong, then they would have criminal immunity. And I don't agree with that. Like, there was that case, I don't know if you remember, years ago. There was like some woman from Australia. Remember, she like called the police and she was in an alleyway, and she like, when the police showed up, she like knocked on the window, and the guy like turned around and like shot through the car and killed her because he like freaked out or something.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that obviously the guy just freaked out, but like that's a level of negligence where you murdered someone where you should 100%, be criminally liable for that. That's ridiculous. And it's the same thing. Like, I don't know enough about the situation that she was talking about. I've seen the clip that everyone's seen, and there's not a lot of context. Like, obviously that clip looks really bad, but we don't know like what happened beforehand to make a full judgment on it. So I think it's a bad policy, and I think it's a bad answer.
Yeah, the policy that Trump is trying to, or the problem that he's trying to solve, and he's trying to craft a policy to solve that problem. I think it's better if he can just articulate the problem itself. And I've heard this many times. It's like this George Floyd effect with policing, where police used to engage in proactive policing a lot. Like, they're on the job, they can sense when things are not right, and they look into it to the point where they're actually preventing crime. And I think the George Floyd thing really, made police nervous about doing this. Like, they're so worried about litigation or winding up in jail that they're kind of stepping back and not really doing as an effective job policing as possible. So this does play into Trump's, tough on crime sort of stance that he's going for. But I don't like this just granting immunity to police carte blanche is like, how is that gonna, I mean, I guess it would encourage more proactive policing, but you could have the kind of problems you're pointing out on the opposite side.
Right.
I don't know how you kind of walk that line though.
Well, that is the question. But I mean, that's why you have to rely on, instead of just giving blanket criminal immunity, you have to have the court sort of do it by case basis.
Right. Yeah. But I think laying out the problem, does that help him electorally? Or like, I don't know if he uses George Floyd's name. I'm not sure that's a good campaign.
No, that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think it's better to focus just from a persuasive point of view. I think it'd be better to focus on crime not this angle. I mean, also like the right at the moment is kind of iffy on cops too. So, it's
Right.
not like a standard like, oh, the right's super pro police and the left doesn't like police. Like there's a lot of mix in the right wing populist movement that's anti-police at the moment as well. So
True. True. But he's trying to address crime, and
yeah,
crime is getting out of control. Like it really is. Well, look, I live in a big city, Los Angeles. I don't I mean, I don't know if crime is a problem where you live, so
sure. Not as much as LA, but
pre-pandemic, I mean, we were at super low levels of crime. Like now you watch local news and it's just insane by comparison.
right.
So,
Well, they also, I mean, the news is going to focus on, what gets them eyeballs. So,
of course, look, and that is 100% true, but what I'm saying is before the campaign or before the pandemic, they were doing the exact same thing, focusing on whatever is going to get them eyeballs, right? But there
right.
just wasn't that much to focus on. There really wasn't. Now the
Nope.
news is like back to back, like home break-ins, murders, assaults on the street, like all that shit. Pre-pandemic, you didn't get a lot of that stuff in the news, and I'm assuming if it was going on, they'd have it in the news, right? Because if it bleeds, it leads, right?
Hmm.
So it's just the news has tangibly changed in Los Angeles since the pandemic. Yeah.
I find it interesting because you do talk about reining in prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you. Why doesn't that skepticism apply to law enforcement?
Well, I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system. I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case in Florida. Everyone said that was the biggest case. That was the most difficult case. And I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time. And he had 50 years worth of documents. And they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We cover you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to different topics.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
No, excuse you. You're the one that held me up at 35 minutes, just so you understand.
If we can move on now to the state of the race, sir, I want to get back to the campaign. Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate? And do you agree with him?
No, I know this. He is very family oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families. And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here. He also says that people that don't have children should get less votes than those that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your campaign
I think
position?
I'm speaking for him, too.
This is like, that's such an empathetic answer right there. You go through life and you don't meet the right person, it's not your fault.
This answer that Trump gives is like perfect.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked by how good this answer is. Like, because, yesterday we were talking about how he was giving such bad answers to like articulate some of the things he's saying, but this is like the perfect answer to the JD Vance cat lady question. I'm kind of shocked. So if Trump could come up with an answer like this quality every time when he says something and they ask him about it, this would like, he'd be in like a really good place.
Yeah.
He strongly believes in family. But I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet and would have been good, that that's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him, actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family-oriented, but that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just one last point, and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles.
So yeah, perfect answer. Even though
Perfect
answer, I don't think it's like a factually accurate answer, right? But it's a perfect answer. And it's unfortunate for Trump because like this answer gets lost in this interview because no one focuses on it. They'll just focus on the black comment that he made, right?
You don't think it's true because you think JD Vance thinks people who don't have families are pieces of garbage? Is that what you're saying?
My intuition here, because obviously I can't read his mind, from what he said whenever he's answered this question, and he's kind of articulated this multiple times, is that he thinks that people who don't have children, one of two things is going on. People that don't have children are either like emotionally or morally defective because they're not doing their duty to have children, or that not having children makes them crazy, and thus that craziness like takes like over them, and then they sort of ruin the country politically, because that's the idea. Like when you say crazy cat lady, there's a specific idea there. It's not just like, oh, a woman has a bunch of cats. It's a woman has a bunch of cats because she doesn't have children, and she's using the cats as a proxy to fill the void of not having children, right? That's the idea when you say a cat lady, like a crazy cat lady.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how I interpret what Vance is saying. But I think Trump's like counter to that, even though I don't think it's true, I think it's like the perfect messaging, right? The perfect way to respond to that. Obviously, it's something that he thought about and workshopped with, people before he got on stage here.
Yeah. Good show.
Principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator J.D. Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children.
What a terrible idea.
Yeah, look, you're getting this completely wrong, you dumb bitch. Okay?
No.
Look, some people actually believe in democracy. I know Democrats don't, but some people do. Okay? It's not that they're voting for their children. It's called custodial voting, you dumbass.
Terrible.
I hate this framing. It's like finally custodial voting is getting a hearing. And look, and it's so ironic that the Democrats are the ones that are misframing it. They're supposed to be for expanding voting rights. Like, why are we disenfranchising children? Obviously, children are not able to vote on their own, but they have political interests that can be expressed at the ballot box by their parents. The same way their parents express their interests in all sorts of ways.
Mm-hmm. I just
look, it's Sitch is one of those disgruntled cat ladies who just he can't handle the fact that people have children that they have to look out for their political interests.
No, I say this whenever we talk about it. I think I don't agree with this concept. I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I don't. Your thinking on it, I completely disagree on.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
You're like, children don't count.
Children don't count. I mean, are children even really like human if you think about it?
Why do we spend so much? Why do we give child tax credit then? Why do we spend so much money on schooling and all that?
Because we want to
incentivize
people to have children.
Why not? Why not actually take their political interest into consideration in elections?
Okay, I
Why
don't
not?
agree that I don't agree that the way to do that is by having people that have kids get their kids vote.
Why do we count them? Why do we count them in when we do representation? Why are they counted in the number of people that are represented?
How many people are in the district?
Right. A representative represents the kids, even though they have no political. They do have a political stake in who the representative is, but they don't get to express it, even though that representative speaks for them.
So what? They get to represent it when they're 18, when they're an adult.
I want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but it's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time, that have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happen. If I am, you're not going to have any problem.
The political interest of American children are not expressed, but the illegal alien political interest is expressed. Disgusting.
How is it? How? That's
disgusting.
Wait, but that's literally not true. What do you mean?
Yeah, it is.
How? They can't vote either.
Yes, they can.
No, there's like 2 counties in like the entire country that they can vote in local elections. This is not true. Okay.
Only 2 counties?
Something like that, yeah.
So, and the people in those counties don't get to vote for their children?
No.
Disgusting.
Okay.
Disgusting.
Okay.
Disgusting. Look, these people care more about illegal immigrants voting than they do your children.
Okay. There you go. I like it.
A long time, you're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs to people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that vice president question, candidate question was right in there with that. Yeah. So let's talk about J.D. Vance for a little bit. He's had some stumbles out of the gate. I don't know if you're hearing what we hear as reporters, but it's been a tough couple of weeks for him. Why did you choose J.D. Vance?
Why
did you choose him? And I'm having a hard time hearing, too. I know everybody out there can, but it's hard to hear.
I'll tell you why. I chose him because he's a very strong believer in work and the working man and woman, and especially the working man and woman who have been treated very unfairly, because you have many of them in this room, but you have many of those people, they were treated very unfairly. They worked very hard and they were treated unfairly. He wrote the book that became a bestseller. The movie became a smash hit. He's a very smart guy. Without the benefit of having a family that has contacts, like a father that was well connected, he got into Yale Law School. He graduated in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude. I mean, you take a look at, his career has been an amazing career. He started off at a level with a difficult family situation, very difficult, with the mother and the father and everything else. He ends up going to Yale Law School and was one of the top students, became the head of the Law Journal. I mean, that's an amazing thing. He's a 4-year, he was in the military with great distinction for 4 years, got out, went into business, became successful in business, very successful in business, actually, did public offerings and other things. And I have to believe in that. I mean, he's somebody that was born in a rough situation. Most of the people know that situation because it was very well documented in his book. And I have a lot of respect for somebody that can get into Yale and become one of the best students in Yale, that meets a young woman at Yale who was also outstanding, and they get married, they have a beautiful family. But he had he's made himself an amazing life. He then goes to Ohio, lives in Ohio, and he had my endorsement.
Remember when I said the other day about how it's not like whoever has the quote expertise or the elite institution on their side likes to just use it when they use it and then deny it when they don't have it?
Yeah.
It's like the perfect example of that.
Is he using expertise? Is he using...
Yeah, he's like, oh, he went to Yale.
Oh, they got the accolades, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh, he went to this Ivy League college, right? So impressive. He went to the Ivy League college. So I just think it's interesting.
Yes, and then Republicans will talk about how anyone who goes to Yale is an elitist piece of shit. And
right.
should be scorned from public life.
Yep.
That
obviously.
But he wins the Senate. He becomes a United States Senator. So he's a United States Senator. So Harris, like I respect you for your success, I respect people for
you.
their success.
The reason I asked the question is because the last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
And 2 days after that...
I cannot understand. Your microphone
I know,
is so
it is really hard for me to understand you too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you.
Happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
Really
understand, Harris.
I have a few more questions.
Because of the distance, and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
Are you asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring, you choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris, and that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at J.D. Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him, and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think J.D. is. I think that all of them would have been. But you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in.
Can we just a moment of silence for this? Trump says he could actually lose the election. I don't think anybody would admit that Trump thinks he can lose the election, but
there you go.
He very clearly just said, if you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
Right. That's good. That's a good catch. That's a good catch. But it's kind of that answer is interesting because it's kind of like throwing Vance under the bus, isn't it? It's like, oh, nobody cares about your vice president pick.
Well, no, it's true. Everybody says this. Everybody says this. Nobody votes for vice president.
I know it's true, but it still is kind of hilarious to hear like the presidential candidate say like, nobody gives a fuck. Like, okay.
Well, and he got caught fibbing there because he said, I've always had great respect for J.D. Vance. I mean, J.D. Vance was talking mad shit about Trump. He didn't have any respect for him back then. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
These guys started on rocky terms here.
Yep.
So.
J.D. Vance?
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, my point is here.
It was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying?
I don't think, I think that the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the death of a baby after the baby is born, based on the governor of Virginia. Based on the governor of Virginia, they're allowing the death of the baby after it's born. They're allowing abortions in the 8th and 9th month.
Well, Democrats have denied.
I think they're right, and I think the Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps, but the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it. Everybody
But the
wanted
majority
it
of
back.
Americans oppose Roe v. Wade being overturned.
They
Multiple
don't know
polls have
about
showed that,
this.
sir.
Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Ronald Reagan believed with rape, incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing, out of the federal government, it's in states, and people are voting. And I will say, Ohio is, let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing, a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But the people are now voting. And it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our country apart, and it's giving it to the people to vote on. And they're voting. And many states have already voted. Others are in the process of voting. And it's bringing it back to the people and a vote of the people. And it's not at all radical. And again, you have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Most people believe in the 3 exceptions. Most Republicans believe in the exceptions. But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of Virginia, the former governor, I might add, who said, we set the baby aside and then we decide what to do. Meaning, what do? We execute the baby. That's a radical, horrible position. And some people want that. I don't want it. Most people don't.
Thank you. Can I just pivot really quickly to another question?
So he actually, I think, kind of saved the answer there. It was like a decent answer because at first he said that the Republicans were like more radical and he made them more moderate, which I mean, I think is true, but I don't know if you really want to like advertise that. But then he kind of saved it by bringing it back and saying like, oh, I think most Republicans agree with like the 3 exceptions.
Right.
So I think that's a good framing. Oh, I forgot. So wait, we're at 26. So I don't know. Do you know about the Watergate scandal?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, I know about
Nixon
Watergate,
with no,
obviously. Yeah.
There's the water. Okay, let me rewind it for a second. I forgot to point this out.
Sense that you were thinking something more
Yes.
up to date than that. But I mean, if you are talking about Watergate, yes, I am familiar with
No, so here's the
Watergate.
Watergate scandal, okay?
Oh, yes. No, where he grabs the wrong water. He gets her water instead of his water.
Right. So yeah. So if you haven't seen this, look, watch Trump's hand in the water
Microphone.
bottle.
I know it is really hard for me to understand you too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you.
I'm happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
Really happy to hear
understand,
that.
Harris,
I have a few more questions.
because of the distance and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
Are you asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some.
Okay, so some people like they took a clip of that and they thought that Trump was intentionally tightening her water bottle, the woman in blue's water bottle, to like fuck with her or something.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Right.
That is the level of politics we're at right now.
Right. So I just bring it up because later you'll see in a few minutes he drinks from it. So it's very clear that he just thought that was his water bottle. I think it's funny. People are like, oh my God, he's like intentionally trying to tighten, which would be kind of funny if he did. But actually, it's interesting because like the narrative was people on the left were like, oh, he's intentionally tightening it. People on the right were like, no, he's opening it for her. Right? He's a gentleman. And I was like, no, he just thought it was his water bottle.
I'm convinced everyone online is a 14-year-old boy. It's just, it's like, really? This is what we're arguing about now?
About, you brought up health, Harris. You're an active man. We see you golfing all the time. But if you win, you'll still be president at 82, which is older than Biden is right now.
But not mentally. Look, mentally.
Here's the question.
He shot. But most people.
Would you consider?
Most people. I know many people in their 80s and their 90s that are in great shape. Some of our greatest leaders. You look at throughout the world history, the greatest leaders, some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question.
So I think the first part of that, perfect. I think instead of going to like greatest leaders or 80s, just you should be like, look at me on the stage right now. Could Joe Biden do this? Does anyone think Joe Biden could do this? Have these questions on the stage like this? And the answer is it's so obviously no.
Right.
Right.
Question: would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining, or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would?
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
Oh my
me,
goodness.
and I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That wasn't a question. She
Sir,
didn't
you
ask
can
me a
answer the
question.
question.
She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated
You
your
can answer the
statement, sir,
question.
actually.
You said you would. You would.
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If
to
I
step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them.
Well, can I
got 'em.
just-
I took 2 of them. But let me ask.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president, and I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this gentleman, and our country is a mess. We have inflation. We have the millions of people falling in. We have Afghanistan, which was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. What he has done to our country, and her too, what they've done to our country, she has been a horrible vice president. She's considered the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Mr.
Don't mean to
President.
interrupt you, but would you consider taking the cognitive test
Mr. President.
I would love to
and
do
make
it.
it public?
Well, I've already taken 2 of them, but I'll do it again.
Mr.
It is interesting to me that he doesn't hear, because I've heard him do it in other places, and I think it's very effective, is to focus on not just Biden's decline, but that Kamala helped cover it up and be like, she lied. She lied to the country. She lied to the country, for 4 years. Why should we trust her, to be president? I think that would be an effective route of attack. They should kind of be hammering home every time in these conversations.
Sure. And they brought it up. He's got the perfect opportunity.
Yep. Isn't it sad that we're at this point in American history where we have to talk about presidential candidates having cognitive tests because everyone's so fucking old? This is so awful.
Yeah, it's just a situation. So
That's terrible. Can we get some young people, please?
look, Kamala's running.
She's
She's
60.
young, Sitch.
She's 60 something.
I mean, well,
Isn't
that's young in the political realm. So
I mean, I agree. She doesn't look 60. I thought she was 50, but so she looks good for her age, but she's 59. So she looks good for her age, but still kind of this is where we're at.
President, how do you intend to...
I suggested, Harris, that let's take one. I said, Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her, too. I would do it with her also. You know what? She failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President.
Are you saying she wouldn't pass? Just to be clear,
I'm just giving you the facts.
to be clear, you don't think Harris...
How do you intend,
She
and
didn't
look,
pass her bar exam, and she didn't think she would pass it, and she didn't think she was going to ever pass it, and I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it.
She did pass it.
There's a man over here, I think he must work for
Mr.
her.
President, I would love to ask you about January 6th. You've called yourself the candidate of law and
Yeah, do you think that's a good line of attack? She failed her bar exam. I don't
if it's true, it is. Sure. Yeah.
I think she failed it the first time, but she took it the second time and obviously passed.
Okay.
So
She's a failure.
Does not seem effective to me.
Who cares if the president failed the bar exam?
Yeah. Trump never took the bar exam.
Yeah, great. He never failed it.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think it's going to make a bit of difference. No one's going to vote based on this.
No, I know,
So,
but it's just
yeah.
it kind of cultivate I don't think cultivating an attitude of pettiness is the direction to go.
Well, you're just out of luck. I mean, that's the entire election now.
I understand that. I just don't think it's an effective strategy.
Yeah. Probably not. You probably leave this out of it.
Right.
Just focus, like you said, focus on Biden pivot to dishonesty. Bring up the fact
Right.
that she failed the bar exam, dumb. Bring up the fact that, I'm assuming she's vice president. I'm assuming she's meeting with the president every day, right? She's got to be up to speed on what's going on in case she's got to step in. She's not
Right.
seeing this cognitive decline that was completely obvious to everyone after the debate was invisible to Kamala Harris. It makes me wonder, like, what kind of person is this that doesn't recognize that the country is in danger by this?
I mean, you literally just laid out the perfect answer. And it is kind of shocking that Trump isn't just hammering this every time he speaks.
Yeah.
Kamala lied about cognitive decline, or she's like too stupid to see it, and then we shouldn't trust her, with the country, right? These are just really strong areas of attack.
Look, I'm sure she is meeting with him every day. She knew what was up.
I mean, we assume. It seems almost impossible to think that she didn't know what was going on.
Right. Yeah. Well, Trump is in a unique position here because, I mean, he was president. I'm sure, I don't know his situation with Pence. I've heard vice presidents, there's different situations with different vice presidents. Like some presidents assign their vice presidents different tasks to do, and some presidents are like, stay away from me. You got your own office. We'll call you if we need you. So I don't know the situation. Yeah.
No, that's definitely true. There's definitely a lot of times vice presidents, like people kind of think of vice presidents as like co-presidents.
Understudies. Yeah. But that's not the case.
That's usually not the case. I think one of the most involved vice presidents in recent history is actually Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney. Yep. Exactly.
Right? Because, the vice president has their own staff. They're usually doing their own thing. The president kind of assigns them some job that's like just something to like get them away, give them something safe to do or something they don't want to do, get them out of their hair sort of situation. But so, I guess it's theoretically possible that Harris didn't know
nothing. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's possible. I think it's unlikely, though.
I would say so. Yeah. But I would dig in. I would find out the actual situation, and then I would craft several talking points around what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to make her look as bad as possible.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
It's politics.
Yeah.
Look, I wouldn't be dishonest, obviously. That's why you get the I want to be clear here because a lot of people think, if you attack somebody, you're being dishonest, right?
Well, I don't know if it's possible to figure out the exact extent of what she knew or didn't know.
Well, no, I'm sure there is a record of all the meetings that the president has and who is involved in those meetings.
Yeah, but
so that's where I would begin. Like,
right.
How often was Kamala Harris in the room with Joe Biden for the last 2 years up until today? Right.
Right.
That's where I would start.
Okay, maybe.
And look, if she saw him once every 6 months. You're going, okay, well, maybe there's no there, right?
Right.
But if she saw him every other day, you're like, okay, this bitch is something's up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is public record. Who the president meets with and all that stuff is daily schedule.
Yeah, but is it public record now or is it public record after they're out of office?
I don't know.
He might not have that information like now.
Right.
But
well, if you can't
just make it up.
If you can't get that information, I mean, I would turn that into a story. I'd be like, how come we can't find out how often you met with the president? Like, why is that a big secret? Why are you holding secret meetings with the president?
Yeah, the American people deserve to know like what Kamala knew in terms of, Biden's cognitive decline, right?
Exactly.
When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely.
Sure. There he is.
Look at this.
He's drinking the water.
I drink your milkshake.
He's drinking the water. Oh my God. Right in front of her. Look, she's staring at him like, this motherfucker is drinking my water.
He's like, this is your water right here.
Look, it's a power move. He's like, fuck you. I'm going to drink your water while you're asking me a question.
No, this is actually super smart here because this woman is so angry and triggered that this water over here is definitely poisoned. Like Trump made the right move here. She is his taster right now.
I say. Yeah, he didn't want to get Joffreyed, right?
He
Didn't want
didn't.
to get.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
He knows
Okay.
what's up. Trump is smart. He's met
Yeah.
with Putin, okay? Of course he drank out of Putin's glass.
January 6th. You've called yourself the candidate of law and order.
Yeah.
When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
You called them patriots. 140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones, at least one officer lost an eye, one had 2 cracked ribs, 2 smashed spinal discs, another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint that will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it in 100 years from now. They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to
my
the
question
people
is
that
on
tried
those
to
rioters who assaulted officers.
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very tough system. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis, how come the people that took over a large percentage of Seattle, how come nothing happened to them? How come the people
But sir, we're
that,
talking about people that were seen beating officers with flagpoles, dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that video, sir?
Oh, really? Well,
you would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in Minneapolis. You know, people died in Minneapolis. And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look, nothing is perfect.
140 officers were assaulted that day, Sitch?
That's pretty crazy.
140 officers?
If that's true, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Are you skeptical of that?
Totally skeptical.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably saying like there was, I don't know, ever how many hundreds of police officers there, and how many of them had an interaction where somebody physically touched them in some capacity,
pushed them
right?
or something
right.
like
So
that. Yeah.
So each one of those counts as one. So
okay.
I'm assuming that's how that number is calculated.
This is like the 34 convictions thing, where it's like, well, it's all the same conviction, but it's just they split it up into 34 convictions so they could say 34 convictions.
I see. Yeah. Well, not quite that, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just stupidly conflating the numbers for political gain. But whatever, it's politics.
In life. But you have
But that's totally dishonest.
This
people
is,
from
like, I think the answer he's giving now about this, because remember the question was, you said you're part of the January 6th rioters.
Yeah.
And kind of how does that work with you saying police should have criminal immunity? Because it seems to be in conflict in some kind of ideological level. Like from a rhetorical standpoint, I think he's giving a good answer. A lot of people perceive these issues through the lens of fairness. And so they say, well, why are the left-wing rioters and protesters not being arrested and held up to the standard that the right-wing rioters and protesters are being held up to? And you can just trigger that intuition of fairness and the unfairness of it. And like, that's a good rhetorical way to handle that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that doesn't really address like the substance of the question, because it is kind of ridiculous that you would pardon any of those people. But this is, I think, a good way to handle it from like a strategic perspective.
Yeah, procedural fairness. You got to treat everyone the same.
Mm-hmm.
from Minneapolis. You have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C. They were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying. They were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice. That's why they went after me as a political opponent, because they felt.
Did nothing happen to them? That's kind of, I'm skeptical of that
I don't know.
as well.
Well, that's the thing. We just don't hear about it. So the assumption is. But
you spray paint the Liberty Bell and you don't even spend a night in jail? Please. Come on.
Right.
They couldn't win without doing that. And we're going to win our cases and we're going to be vindicated. But I have to spend a lot of time on that and money. That's what they want. After the election, they won't care. Although in my case, I think they probably will, because the hatred is pretty deep. But I'll tell you, they went after me as a political opponent. That's never happened in our country before, and it sets a terrible, terrible precedent.
What do you do on day one if you win? What's your first thing?
What do? I close the border, and I do two things.
You know, I'm surprised that you think that these very aggressive journalists would be like, Donald Trump, did you not try to lock up Hillary Clinton? It was reported that you attempted to do this. So it's weird. He never gets asked that question. He's kind of
you always say that he did try to lock up Hillary Clinton, that he talked to his head of the Justice Department at the time and said, investigate her, but the justice said no. Was it Barr, or was it a different guy?
It was
it was the previous guy, right?
Barr, right? Because remember, it was oh my God, what was his name? It was the senator, right? And then he had recused himself.
Yep. So but I don't know the situation of that interaction. We should go over it on stream so people can know if that's the case.
Yeah, it was reported. Jeff Sessions was his name. It was reported that Trump did this. I think it was even reported in the Mueller report, if I recall correctly.
Right. So Trump went to Sessions and said, hey, we got to get on this locking her up. That was a campaign promise.
I mean, it was. So it's kind of, funny. But
And Jeff Sessions said, no, we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. But then Trump, brilliant politician that he is, turned it into, oh, I don't care. I just let her go. Right?
Right. Once he was told that they're not going to go after her. So that was a bad idea to go after her.
Because I can do a lot of things simultaneously. I close the border. We don't want people coming. We want people to come in, Harris, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. They have to come in legally.
You found the Jeff Sessions stuff?
It wasn't Jeff Sessions. It was Don McGahn.
Well, we're almost done with this. Let's bring it up after. We'll do it when we do Super Chats.
We want people. I want people to come into our country, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. So when you say, what do? That, and I drill, baby, drill. I bring energy way down. I bring interest rates down. I bring inflation way down so people can buy bacon again, so people can buy a ham sandwich again, so that people can go to a restaurant and afford it. Because right now, people can't buy food. Your grocery bills are up 40, 50, 60%, right? She's agreeing to me. Oh, she's agreeing. Thank you. I like you very much.
Mr. President, I think we are.
But it's true. Your grocery bills are up. And then they're mandating that you buy an all-electric car. Elon Musk endorsed me, and he's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. But I'm against everybody having an electric car, okay? I'm very much against that. You have to be able to, if you want a hybrid or if you want a gasoline-propelled car. But, we have more liquid gold, gasoline, oil, under our feet than any other country. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than any other country. I want to use it. I want to use what we have. I want to bring down prices, bring down costs, and I also have to stop the invasion. And remember, they're taking your jobs. These people coming in are taking your jobs.
Project 2025.
I think we have to leave it there by the Trump team.
All right.
So leave it. That is the last word. Thank you so much, Mr. Trump, for coming today and joining us.
Well, thank you.
I wish he would talk about nuclear. I don't know his position on nuclear.
Yeah, it is interesting that he focused so much on, I guess just because it's the politics of it. He's focused so much on oil instead of nuclear.
Yeah.
Nuclear. So.
And I don't know. I guess energy is a giant input for production. So if you could cut energy costs in half, I guess that would totally lower prices.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of there's a huge opportunity. I don't know if it's that politically effective because I don't think most people see it yet. But there's a huge opportunity for either Republicans or Democrats to grab this issue, which is that going forward in the near future, the amount of energy and electricity that we're going to have to generate is going to be so much higher
Yeah,
than we could
massive.
possibly imagine. Because the amount of energy requirements for both AI and for robots when they come out is going to be so consuming.
Yep.
And we need to like tenfold, 20-fold, 100-fold increase our energy production. And there's obviously no way to do that without nuclear or some other, undiscovered or unrealized energy source or something. Like we're not going to get
Nuclear's
there
the
by
way
just
to do
burning
it.
oil and
Yeah.
coal. So
Nuclear is the option, is really the
yeah,
only option. So if
yeah,
he amended this policy to be like, we're gonna drill, baby, drill as a stopgap and heavily invest in nuclear. Like we're gonna use our own energy, our own oil to get to nuclear. That's a like solid plan. That's a solid forward thinking plan.
yeah. I mean, there was obviously now this comes from China, so we should assume anything comes out of China is skeptical of. We should be skeptical of. But they claim that they had some reactor that was like a next generation nuclear reactor that like they intentionally allowed it to go into a situation where like
Meltdown.
the meltdown, I guess is what you call it,
Yeah.
and it instead of like having the problem, it just like turns itself off, which would be like what everyone wants the nuclear reactor to do, is that when it
Yeah.
loses power, it just turns itself off as opposed to melting down and destroying everything.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and if that's the case, we should obviously be building these things all over the place.
Thank you very much.
They've been telling us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, very much. Great
Thank you,
honor.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
NEBJ will email about details regarding the conversation with Vice President Kamala Harris in September.
Okay.
All right.
Too bad that they
Hold
this is
on,
supposed to be an
they're
hour
saying something.
conversation, but because it took them like 30 minutes to set up the thing, they it's only 30 minutes.
She's saying something about the Kamala thing.
Thank you.
Much. Great
Thank you,
honor.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
NEBJ will email about details regarding the conversation with Vice President Kamala Harris in September. Thank you.
They're going to email
It's not
about
until
the
September.
conversation
Jeez.
with Kamala Harris in September. Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Look, they're trying to keep her from crashing the car before November, Sitch.
Maybe that's
Carefully
the case.
choreographed plan.
Right. Maybe that's the case. But no, I mean, so it's just, I think for Trump's perspective, it's unfortunate that one comment, the black person comment, because I think he did overall pretty good. I think the clips that would have come out of this otherwise would have been pretty good clips, and it kind of all gets lost because of that weird black person comment.
Sitch, what's a black job? Come on, tell me.
I don't know.
What does that
What is
mean?
it? That's a good question. It's just anyone that has a job, Adam.
What people mean by that is low status job, which I find personally offensive. It's like,
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
low wage job generally. Yeah. So
all these people on stage, all these black women on stage here, they have white people jobs.
that's true. That's true. It
They
should
have
be, no, see,
white
Trump should be
jobs.
like, this is what Trump should say. He should be like, the AI is coming for the black jobs. Okay. No one's gonna need journalists anymore. It's like the AI is gonna
Poor
do it.
thing.
Yeah, there you go.
No one's going to need. Look, we have Google already to ask your bias questions. We don't need you.
Yeah,
We have
exactly.
woke Google. You've been replaced.
Exactly. Yeah, like 5 years from now, it's not gonna be a journalist on stage asking questions. It's gonna be like a screen with like the Google chatbot voice or the ChatGPT voice, like just asking questions.
I saw Anna Kasparian in chat. I don't know if she's still in
Hey,
chat,
Anna.
and she sent us a super chat. So
Oh, nice. Well, while you find it, I just want to read this real quick because we were talking about it. So I found the
Okay.
article. This was
Jeff Sessions.
from 2000. This is from 2018. It says the U.S. president told the White House counsel Don McGahn, so this is the White House lawyer, in the spring that he wanted to order the Justice Department to bring charges against both Hillary Clinton and ex-FBI Director James Comey, but was talked out of doing so. McGahn wrote a memo to dissuade Trump, noting the potential political consequences and including actions such as impeachment that could follow if he pressed for this. So
Oh, he's talked out of it. Like,
He was talked out of it, yeah, but he wanted to do it, so not
right.
great. But
Was Biden talked out of it?
out of what?
Pursuing Trump.
Well, that depends. Obviously, people that believe that would say no because Trump is being pursued, right?
But is he being pursued by the Justice Department?
No, well, there's one federal charge, which is the Jacks. Oh no, there's two. I'm sorry, there's two. There's the documents case, and which got changed. I mean, I thought it got, and I said this. I said some incorrect information the other day. It didn't get like completely dismissed. I think they just have to like shuffle some things around. I don't know, some legal stuff that I'm not familiar with. That explains that. And then the January 6th case. Those are the two federal charges.
What's up, Anna? Anna says she's still here. So
Okay. Anyways.
people in chat are asking us to drag her on, but I believe like Anna can come on anytime she wants. All she has to do is send me a DM. But I believe she has a job working for the Young Turks. Have you guys heard of it?
That's right.
So I believe she's doing a show today. So
Okay.
I think she has Fridays off, and you guys should watch on Wednesdays because Wednesday's Anna's day, where she basically runs the entire thing.
That's right. Oh, did you see that like ridiculous Laura Loomer post on Twitter?
No.
So,
ridiculous Laura Loomer.
I know,
post.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's like ridiculous.
How could I miss such a thing?
I know. So Laura Loomer, because of this comment that Trump made, she like somehow got a copy, supposedly a copy of Kamala's birth certificate. Okay.
Oh my God.
Right. So it's like, oh, really? We're gonna bring up this? Like, first of all, which is just really this is so bad from a strategic perspective for the Republicans. Like,
True.
we really don't want to remind the voters of like Trump being related to birtherism, even though Trump didn't do this. Laura Loomer did it. But so she finds some birth certificate that's supposedly Kamala's, and she tweets this out, and it's so like she's so dishonest. And I mean, everyone knows Laura Loomer is a fucking lolcow and a liar. She says, "I have a copy of Kamala Harris's birth certificate. Nowhere on the birth certificate does it say that she's black or African." Okay, so that's what it says right at the top. But if you look at the birth certificate, there's not even a section for the race of the child anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's not going to say she's black. There's not even a section for it on the birth certificate at all.
Cool.
And then all there is it says the race, it says color or race of the mother and father. For father, it says Jamaican. And then for the mother, it says Caucasian, which first seems weird because she's Indian. But then supposedly back in those days, for some reason, apparently that was like a thing that Indian people and a lot of people were kind of lumped in as Caucasian. So really dumb. It's a really dumb thing. I think they should all drop it.
Yes. It's hard to give the Republicans it's hard to give the Democrats a hard time for making everything about race if like you're going to turn right around and make everything about race, right? It's like,
well,
you lose some moral high ground pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you want to have, Trump surrogates talk about it, the kind of hit the angle that you were talking about, like, oh, she's lying in the black community, right? Have surrogates do that. Trump obviously shouldn't be talking about this stuff directly. So
yes.
Okay. Ben for $5. Oh, what were you saying?
I agree.
Okay. Ben for $5 says, I swear I've heard several politicians say black jobs, including Democrats. Yeah, in the past,
but they're allowed to.
This was a thing you were allowed to say. Obviously, things have changed
don't understand. Now. No. Republicans are never allowed to talk about race because they're all Nazis.
Oh, okay.
They're all white supremacists, right?
That is true. Yeah.
So whenever they're talking about race, it's dog whistling and bad faith. And whenever Democrats talk about race, look, they're trying to change the world. They are on an anti-racist mission. So they're never accused of racism, even though they're constantly racist against white people all the time. That doesn't count.
That doesn't count, yeah.
Right, because they're oppressors.
True. Anyway. We're oppressors, Adam. Okay.
We are?
We're oppressors, yeah.
Who am I oppressing?
All the non-whites.
I mean, not really.
No, you are. This is part of your white ignorance and your white privilege, the fact that you're denying this.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're a horrible bigot.
I wish I had a cushy mainstream media journalism gig making 6 figures a year.
You got the yell on Trump on stage.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
super.
Mr. Ubercross, thank you so much for the 20 gifted memberships. Thank you. Gay Ben for $2,
Oh, yeah,
our
thanks.
favorite. Or no, our not our favorite, our secretly maybe, but not, we don't know, favorite super chatter for $2 says black people rejecting jobs is a bold strategy. Wow. I don't think that's the problem, Gay Ben. I don't think that's the problem. Stargate 404 for $10 says, you see post Riders 2024 election model, adjustable sliders based on whether groups shifted R plus D since 2020. You can compare new polling data to 2020 based on groups and outcomes, political nerd dream. I haven't seen that, but we should check that out. That sounds pretty cool.
Didn't Nate Silver say that model was bullshit? I think he did.
Oh, did he? I don't know.
I saw a tweet, him complaining about the sliders. Maybe it's this model, but I'll check it out. Look, I don't care. Who cares what Nate Silver says?
Right.
It sounds like a fun little internet toy to play with.
MA566 for $5 says words, cackle, nonsense platitude, Kamala Harris. Wow, powerful stuff. Left wing media.
Hail Bluntyfly.
And then got Bluntyfly at the end. Caleb for $5 says Trump saying he was the best president for black people since Abraham Lincoln should be disqualifying LMAO. Who cares about the black jobs comment? Yeah, it's not a great. Well, he's already said that, so it's like the I guess the shock of that comment was has worn off, so people don't really care anymore. But it's a stupid comment.
Since Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. The Rooster for $2 says Trump was the first black president. I believe
Bill
Clinton was
right?
the first black president. Yeah, how dare you? What is ABBC for $5 says if you zoom in, you can see the reporter. Oh my God. You can see the reporter unzip her pants to rub. YouTube doesn't allow this word herself at the attempt to question Trump. There you go. Wow. Okay. Stargate 404 $5 says you can look at the new poll demographic breakdowns and compare it to 2020, then put that shift in the model, probably a better indicator than the two-way national polls. There you go.
Right.
Jan Habby for $20. Thank you so much. Says, sorry, this message is regarding your previous stream. Well, that's okay. Brianna 2.0 said that France is banning hijabs for the Olympics, but it's not. I've seen lots of girls wear them for archery, which doesn't require as much movement as soccer. Interesting. Well, then I don't know what she's talking about then. I guess I should have
fact-checked lied. That. Damn it. Yep. Thanks for the $20 though.
But thank you, yeah. Depressed Canadian for $5 says Trump questioning if someone is black enough is racist. He has a history of being racist. Starting his career as a birther was racist. I mean, it definitely plays directly into that narrative, which is why it's, I think, such a strategic blunder for him to go anywhere near that question in that way. So,
yeah,
I think questioning, like, there is an interesting question about the DEI stuff because it's kind of interesting. And we might watch a conversation about this between Crystal and Sagar, which I thought was fascinating, which is Kamala was like 100% chosen to be the VP because of her checkboxes. And this was like an uncontroversial thing and everyone knew it at the time. Like, that's why she was chosen. She wasn't chosen because she was great on the campaign trail or anything like that, because she wasn't. She was 100% chosen because she was hitting the checkboxes. And, but there's a good counterpoint to that, which is that aren't all vice presidential candidates kind of chosen for identity politics reasons? Like, maybe not black, but they're chosen because they want like the identity of a state, right? They want to win that state or something. That is kind of true. Vice presidential candidates are almost always chosen for an identity politics reason. But that being said, the left is focusing so much on race and making everything a race issue, including Kamala doing those, white man for Kamala calls, black women for Kamala calls, or Zoom calls. That it's kind of like, if you're going to make everything about race, I think it's fair that race is going to get talked about in in the presidential election.
Yeah, I disagree with the super chat. I don't think Trump questioning someone, if someone is black enough, is racist. I think of racism as discrimination against people based on race. and I don't questioning if someone is black enough isn't really discriminating against them. These are conversations people have. And I hear plenty of people in the black community, black people questioning whether someone is black enough, as if they're going to eject them from the black community. So the idea that it's racist to have these conversations, that just doesn't work for me.
I think it could be racist. It depends on the context, right? Like because like we've covered CRT people who, they have this kind of fucked up racist idea about how if you don't have the right politics, you like are not black. Like you lose your blackness if you don't have the right political stance.
Right. But are you discriminating against a person based on their skin color, or are you discriminating against them based on their politics?
You're doing both. You're saying like that you're being racist against them if the CRT person is saying like you lose the quality that makes you black because you quote behave white or you have like white politics. I just say that's just a flatly racist position for someone to hold. Now, that's not really what Trump was doing in this circumstance, but it's going to play into that racist perspective. So
the thing that I want to differentiate is I want people to stop falling into this trap of anytime you talk about race, it's racism. That's what I want to avoid. So like a clear distinction for me for someone being racist is someone saying like, you can't hire black people because of some X characteristic, right? That's obviously racist.
Well, okay. Racism is just saying that because you have a specific race or skin color, you have some quality.
Some other characteristic, yes.
Or characteristic assigned to you, right? And so you're correct. Like, so if Trump's like questioning her, quote, blackness, he's not necessarily doing that. Or he's not really doing that because what he's saying, because what he's saying is he's claiming, I don't know if this is true or not, but he's claiming that she herself didn't identify as black until it was politically expedient for her to do something.
Expedient, yeah. Right. That's not a racism. That's talking about somebody using, being deceptive for political advantage.
Right. But that's not how it will be perceived. How it will be perceived.
No, I agree.
Right. How it will be perceived is like, oh, you're not black enough in terms of like, you don't have some kind of quality to you that makes you black, whether it be the way you talk or look or dress or act or whatever. So, and this came up with, people were making fun of Kamala for, when she was at that thing in Georgia, I think, where she was kind of code switching to suddenly sound like she's like Southern and black, even though she's fucking grew up in California and shouldn't sound like that at all because people in California don't sound like that. So,
right. Well, you get the distinction. I understand. We need to figure out a way for people to talk about race because race is like a thing people talk about, and they should be able to talk about it without being racist. So
I agree.
But I do think the left uses a racism stick way too much that they make even innocuous statements into a racism.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily.
Albert for 18 months says Kamala is black only because she voted for Biden. That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good
point. All white
yeah.
people who voted for Biden are officially black now.
No, remember Biden made that comment like, if you don't vote for me, you're not black or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Which, that's a pretty racist comment, right? That's actually a racist comment. So.
Yes.
The Wooster for $5 says, focusing on the black thing is a smart move. People voted for Obama 2 times only because he was black, and Kamala is trying to do the same. Not for Trump. For Trump to focus on it is dumb. He can't do it. He can't do it as a white guy, and as Trump, he can't do it. That's why I said if you wanted to do this route, should have gone with Tim Scott or something. Be like, I have my African. Where are my blacks at? Where are my black? I have my black right here. Come on stage, my black, and tell us how Kamala is not black. If you want to do something like that.
Tim Scott puts people to sleep, though. That's a problem.
That's true. But if he's too boring, he can't be racist, right? That's the rule.
Yeah.
Buckethead, thanks so much for joining Fuel Seekers. Gay Ben for $5 says, imagine expressing concern over black employment and then being nitpicked by bad faith liberals and leftists that pretend they were born yesterday.
That's why
it's always going to be in these conversations. So.
That's why I asked my question about whether or not people care more about the policy, because I could see black people saying, hey, I want a better job. Screw these people for nitpicking them. All these hoity-toity journalists. six-figure a year journalists, like, screw you, I'm voting for Trump. That's what they would say.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it's always going to be in these conversations. Jerome Bound for $5 says the problem with the bill that Democrats put forward was that it offered illegals a pathway to citizenship was a non-starter.
Keep telling yourself that.
I don't remember the specifics on that part of it. I'm super skeptical that was the reason why. So
No, and I've heard Republicans say, "Oh, the border bill was terrible," and that there's no way Republicans could sign it. You know, it's a Democratic plan.
Literally like a Republican wrote it, but
yeah. But I think that's, and obviously we're talking about it from a political perspective, because the Democrats, like, I think we've reached a tipping point on immigration where both Democrats and Republicans as voters are convinced that something needs to be done about it. So now the wrangling is really over who is going to get the credit when something is actually done. So that's kind of the phase that we're in.
Right.
And this super chat, Jerome, is really just, you're basically saying, oh, the Republicans will do a much better job and the Democrats are going to suck at it. And you may be right, but.
Well, it's one of those situations where it's like, you know, if there's a problem, like a flood of people coming in and someone's proposing a solution, which you don't think is strict enough, you know, you would still go along with putting tape on the holes before you elect the person that you think is going to like fill them up permanently.
Right.
So, it says, let's see, what is this thing? To be eligible, spouses have to be, okay. So it says, according to the pathway to citizenship for illegals, it was for people that have been married and living in the U.S., that are married to U.S. citizens and living in the U.S. for 10 years. So if you think that was the thing that made it so they wouldn't vote for it, I've got a bridge to sell you.
They 10 years?
Yeah,
they've
10
been
years.
They've been living in the country for
married
10
to
years.
a U.S. citizen and living in the U.S. for 10 years. So,
and you want to deport that person?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
That's a bit extreme, I think.
Right.
Yeah, that's not like, can you imagine Republicans running on that? Like your family values cred just goes completely out the window.
It does, yeah.
We want to separate couples that have been married for 10 years.
Right. When the problem is obviously not the people that have been living in America for 10 years and are married to American citizens. The problem is, you have the, millions of people coming to the border and asking for asylum is the actual issue. So
yeah. That's the poison pill.
Right.
The 10-year marriage clause. Come on. Oh God. I'm so glad you looked that up.
Yeah. Puck971 for $10 says, I'm Indian and I asked all my family and none of them care that Kamala's half Indian. My mom would be more impressed if she was a doctor or engineer. Look at that. Like a true Indian family.
That is awesome.
I love it.
That is the best super chat all day right there.
Human Flourishing for $5 says, doesn't cackling Kamala roll off the tongue better? It was at least 30-ish% of the reason Hillary couldn't win after all.
Cackling Kamala is great.
It's like a good alliteration, but I think fake Kamala or phony Kamala, like it has more weight to it. It means something more substantive than just like that she's cackling, which she does, and it's annoying and it's weird. But the fake phony claim, I feel like just has so much embedded within it.
Is her cackle fake?
It could be. It could be fake. It could be nervous tick. Who knows?
How about counterfeit Kamala?
Counterfeit No, that's too much.
It
it's
is.
Too confusing.
I'm just trying.
I know. You're just trying. You're looking for the alliteration. I got you. Cracks Kamala. Depressed Canadian for 5 Canadians. Thank you. Says this wasn't as noticeable when he was running as Biden, but Trump has lost a step verbally. He meanders even more and is even more easily distracted. That is true. I did notice that. I think we did talked about that at the debate. But it's still like it's not super noticeable. And I mean, I think he did fairly well in that interview that we just watched. So he definitely can still handle himself, I think, pretty well in these public situations, so that won't be super noticeable. Loser Domer, thanks so much for the 2 Canadian. Says smash that like button if you love bacon. That's right. Who doesn't love bacon? You got to hit the button. Everyone loves
I love
bacon.
bacon. Bacon's delicious.
Libertarian Sasquatch for $5 says Harris is just running off pure vibes right now. I haven't heard a single policy from her campaign, all the platitudes. I feel like that's on purpose. I haven't either, but to be fair, I haven't really been looking and listening to her campaign speeches since she has become the de facto nominee. So, but I agree with you, like the vibe like that we get from the public and from the news is definitely vibes based and not policy based.
I've listened to a couple things and they're just all Trump bad. She did say something
That's
about
right. I listened to
we're in
one of
favor
them,
of
yeah,
universal health care. So
right. I did listen to the first thing she did, and it was not policy heavy. It was Trump bad. Yeah.
right, yeah.
I'm the prosecutor. Trump is a criminal. Yeah.
So she's catering to people who are like terrified Trump is going to be president. Like that's her only constituency now.
I mean, that's a large constituency to at least bank off at first. So I don't think it's going to get her to the election, but I think it's a good strategy, at least at first, for her to hit that stick or to hit that pinata until it's all the candy's out of it.
I think people are more interested in what you're going to do. And the problem with that strategy is like, okay, you're going to beat Trump. Well, what are you going to do when you beat Trump? Like, that's what I'm interested in.
No, but what I'm saying is, first of all, you have to remember Biden literally ran and won off of beating Trump specifically. So
Right.
it has worked. And I think it's good. I think it's a good strategy for her, like now, to shore up the Democrat voting base, which is what she wants going into this virtual nomination. After the virtual nomination, she should 100% be switching it up and spreading out to be more policy oriented and trying to, pick up votes.
Right.
So we'll see if she makes that pivot or not. Caleb for $5 says lowering interest rates does not fight inflation. Ironic that Adam laughs at stimulus checks to combat inflation. Unemployment is sliding. That's probably why.
Well, look, there's competing theories on that, Caleb.
Right.
I do understand that the neoclassical economists believe that raising interest rates is how you fight inflation. Yes, I understand that is the current paradigm, the current thinking. I just, most people complain that government spending is what causes inflation. Caleb, maybe you believe this. Maybe you think, oh my God, the government is spending too much money and that's causing inflation. If you do believe that, then you have to tell me how the largest line item on the budget now is for interest payments on the debt. So that is government spending specifically, giant amounts of government spending because we have high interest rates. How that government spending is deflationary. That's what you have to answer for me. So answer me how you think that those huge interest payments, that huge amount of government spending is deflationary, and then you'll understand my argument.
That's right. Stuck for Jar says stop streaming when I don't expect it. Hey, we said we were going to be streaming yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, look.
Come on, Stuck.
When are we going to stream on Friday? Finally have a Friday
stream. We're not
going
to be streaming tomorrow.
Oh, okay, good.
Anna Kasparian. Oh my God.
Look
thank
at
you
this.
so much.
The
Anna
Kasparian. Oh my God, this is so cool.
Anna says, I visited Florida regularly because I have family there. It's clean, little crime, and they have Flanagan's. I cry when my flight lands at LAX. LA is a crime-ridden shit show. Well,
yeah, look, anyone... Sitch, come on, didn't I pick you up around LAX? Like, it's not pretty.
You did. It was not pretty.
It's not pretty. Yeah.
They don't have Flanagan's in LA? Is Flanagan's only a Florida thing?
I guess they don't have Flanagan's.
Is that only a Florida chain? Wow. Flanagan's is great. Well,
we have Fuddruckers.
We got Fuddruckers here too.
Freddy Fuddfuckers.
Flanagan's is like ribs and seafood.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Fuddruckers is burgers. So. But that's based. Well, there you go. J-Mac, thank you so much. Our surrogate father, Daddy J-Mac, for the $20. Says, what about each kid is 0.5 a vote. That's a nice centrist approach, right? Nice. Each
Well,
kid
look,
got half a
I
vote.
don't mind introducing half votes. I just
Okay.
we need it's like I don't like Sitch just ignores the argument completely. I think that's what's most frustrating for me is
I
that
don't ignore the argument. We talked about this at length.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Vinyl for $5 says Sitch doesn't want custodial voting. Adam wants it. How about a compromise? Perhaps a child's vote is worth 2/3. Well, maybe that's too high. Perhaps 3/5. Well, there you go.
Look, and I
I
don't
like it.
first of all, I hate that because it's completely dishonest. Like the only
Well,
reason
it's just a
somebody is
joke.
saying
I
that.
mean,
Yeah, but it's like it's tarring the policy basically with this you're
yeah,
a
sure.
racist
Okay.
kind of
Right,
vibe.
right, right.
Like
There's, I, yeah, okay.
it's a joke in basically saying you're a racist. Like, and if
That
you
was
think
not the
that's a fun,
intention of
no,
the.
that is the intention.
No,
That
no,
is
I don't think that
exactly
was the
the
intention
intention.
of the super chat. But I think
No,
they're
I
just
think
being
that
funny.
is the intention of the super chat. I think that's
Okay.
exactly the intention. Every time somebody brings up the 2/3 voting, they're making a connection to
3/5. But yeah.
3/5. Okay. They're making a connection to the racist policy where when the slave owning states wanted to come in, they wanted more representation in Congress. So they wanted to count their slaves. They didn't want to count slaves as a whole person. So they counted them as 3/5 of a person, right? The same exact thing is happening for children, Sitch. Like they're counting them as whole people, though. They just don't get representation. So,
Right.
like, why would you count a child as 3/5 of a person?
Because they're not really people, children, right? They're like little gremlins.
Some think they are.
Okay. Ben for $5 says, "Wow, camel toe Jamaican me crazy." Jeez. Every election, I voted for the person that lost, but I'm in a swing state. Should I vote? Yeah, you should vote, even if you keep voting for the losers, right? Maybe you should vote the opposite of how you want to vote, right? To see if you can keep the streak going.
If
Like
you're in
use
a
it to your
swing state, you
benefit.
should definitely register and vote. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yes,
Like, you are totally more influential in the election. You probably
is
have
true.
people pandering to you in the state.
That's true. Deej Nuts for $5 says illegal immigrants are included on the census for assigning electoral votes in congressional seats. They don't vote, but they influence elections. That is true. Deck Stra for $20. Thank you. Says, wondering your thoughts on whether you think the media is still powerful enough to successfully gaslight the country into electing Harris, or if the public has enough no faith left in them anymore. Love your show. That's a difficult question. What do you think, Adam? Do you have a take on that?
I can't find I'm lost on the super chat, so I was only half listening.
Deck Straight, Deck STR for $20. Deck Straight.
Wondering your thoughts on whether you think the media is still powerful enough to successfully gaslight the country into electing. Yeah, this is a constant question of mine.
Right.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is the big question, and I don't really know. Like people are busy and constantly, when I'm just talking to people that I'm interacting with in public and politics comes up, I'm kind of hit in the face with how unaware people are of like just basic things.
Right,
So
right.
it is kind of interesting that I think some people do make their voting decisions based on just one or two things that they've seen on the TV about the candidate, and those one or two things can be completely random. So I do think the media does have a lot of power still. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they do. I agree with that. The media definitely has a lot of power, but I mean, it's not infinite power. So I think it's going to really depend on how Kamala behaves in like the month up to the election. Because like what you're saying is very true. There's a lot of people that just don't follow the news, don't care about politics that much, but are still going to vote, and they really only start paying attention like a month out from the election or less. And
Right.
so kind of like the news headlines there are more critical and will kind of, Kamala's still kind of riding the high, and it's going to be a week or two, and we can see when that kind of calms down. Is she going to be able to maintain the high or not? And I don't know if I can really give a straight answer on whether I think the media, how influential the media is going to be until then. Because I mean, they don't, their power of gaslighting and their power of influence is not an infinite power, right? They can tip. I think they can tip things in one direction or another. They can nudge things. I don't think they can just completely move the ball one way or the other. Cyber Thug for $5 says, is DEI bad? If it is, then why would it be offensive to be a DEI hire? You know, it's actually like a really, I think, interesting framing, Cyber Thug. I think it's a really interesting framing that could be rhetorically effective. Like for Trump to say in one of these conversations, someone asked him about the DI, is Kamala DI thing, for him to fire back and say, are you in favor of DI? And if they say yes, which I probably will, if they're asking the question, then you say, well, then isn't it a good thing that they're like a DI thing? Isn't that what you want? That'd be a very interesting, like, troll kind of way to frame that. So,
yeah, I've seen this around, and it is a
yeah.
it is a good response because it does trip them up.
Yeah. So I don't know. That'd be interesting. Lucy Lembug, thanks so much, Lucy, for the 5 get the memberships. Thank you. Liam S for 25 months says, you guys got to appreciate Trump while you can. Our UK politicians lie and spin as bad as him, but you can get a fraction of the comedic return. Oh, well, that's true. That is sad, though.
It is sad. Trump is funny. Look, even these people who probably hate his guts were laughing their butts off, which was funny.
That's true. You heard people laugh in the crowd.
Yeah. I thought it was great.
Depressed Canadian for 10 Canadian, thank you. Says, some people on the left talk about biracial people. Some people on the left talk about biracial people as being privileged through colorism. It's the reverse of white racism, one drop rule, and complain about mixed race people as not black enough. Yes, definitely. We've heard, and I believe watched videos at some point about colorism and sort of that kind of attitude. So
I would like to know how much of the black community is influenced by this, how this affects black voters. I do remember seeing that poll, and look, Obama was mixed race, but I mean, I think he didn't read as mixed race. Like you couldn't see mixed race on, like you look at him and you think he's black. So
right,
you wouldn't be surprised to hear that he had 2 black parents. But with Kamala, she doesn't even read as black to me, but obviously she reads as black to you. So.
Well, she doesn't read as black to me. She reads as mixed race. That's what I always thought when I saw her, as I thought she was mixed race. But you're right. Obama definitely has a more, quote, like black vibe to him than Kamala does. I think it's because I think it might be primarily because Kamala grew up in Southern California, so she has the like Valley Girl accent, which is not associated with black people generally at all, and it kind of like throws your brain for a loop. So, Ryan Aul for $20, thank you, says around 40% of the black population in the U.S. is lower middle class or less. A lot of jobs done by lower middle class can be taken by illegal immigrants. Something affecting 40% of the populace should be seen as concerning. That's a great point. And that would actually be like a great answer for Trump to throw out, to like slap someone in the face when they ask that sort of like, what is a black job question? To be like, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, and he could turn it on them. He could say, "Look, you don't care about 40% of the black population because you're not in that 40%."
Right? Yeah, you're some journalist.
You elitist.
Yeah, exactly. AKA Batosai for 28 months says, how is the media right now getting away with saying Kamala wasn't picked for being black when Biden did say he wanted a woman of color as his choice?
Because they lie.
Essentially, yeah. So. Jerome Bound for $5 says, I'm becoming your favorite super chatter. Well, thank you, Jerome. And thank you for the other $5. Jerome Bound for $5 says, look at me. I'm the favorite super chatter now. Wow. He did the meme. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the favorite super chatter now. No, I'm still not gay Ben. Sorry. Stug for $5 says, I recently saw a tweet saying meritocracy is a myth until someone is accused of being chosen for qualities other than merit or similar.
Yeah. The left does have this, the meritocracy is a myth meme. There's even a book, The Meritocracy Myth.
Yep. It's sad.
Which is a great book, actually. So
really,
yeah. I mean, the argument that they make is that in order to compete in the meritocracy, you kind of have to have wealthy parents. And is it really a meritocracy if you have to have wealthy parents to compete in it? I mean, some would say no, right? So I mean, they do make a compelling argument.
I don't think that's true though, at all. But I mean, it helps obviously, but it's not true on its face. So I disagree with that argument.
You do.
It's just more difficult.
Well, you should read the 300-page book, which is far greater articulation of the argument than just me throwing out.
Fair enough. Yeah. Don Mac from $5 says, have you guys seen Fox Akimbo's videos from a couple months ago on the cancellation of Lindsay Ellis? It's a nice little documentary. I have not. I'll check it out. Isn't she still making content but on one of those
Lindsay Ellis? God, we haven't covered anything of hers in forever.
Because she doesn't make YouTube content. She makes it on one of those you have to pay for platforms. I forget what they're called.
Ew.
The one that the leftist one. So I thought.
How appropriate, right?
I'll check out the Fox Akimbo video. I was watching, everyone's attacking Mr. Beast now for the that person, I forget their name, Ava Chris or whatever.
The trans person that was
they're accusing the PETA stuff. But I saw a video recently that had nothing to do with that. And they were accusing him of being a fraud in terms of basically running a bunch of illegal gambling operations for children. And they made a pretty I don't know if it's true, but they made a pretty compelling argument. I was like, oh, okay. So Shadow to Bravo for $2 says the left turned binders of qualified women bad. Yes. Yeah, that was super, super dishonest. That attack on Mitt Romney, the binders of women. So
yeah, it's just these mean girls attacks. It's like you said it wrong. Yeah. You spoke the words incorrectly. You said the magic phrase badly. Poorly.
Well, that one he didn't even say it badly. That one was just they were just straight up lying. That was just straight up dishonesty.
I don't remember specifically the binders of women. I just remember it as binders of women.
It was there was some comment about having, are you looking for qualified women to be
Jake and Johnny playing Dress to Impress
spots in your administration? And he made a comment of oh yeah, we have binders full of, qualified names of women, or something, to that effect that we're looking through. And then they said oh, you're objectifying women. Because you're saying you have binders full of women. And it was what? That's insane. That's not what the comment was. So.
Oh, yes. You did an objectification.
Right. Depressed Canadian for 5 Canadian says the point that Kamala didn't identify as black until recently is also factually wrong. She went to Howard University, campaigned as a black woman for DA. Well, there you go. I mean, that's definitely a good counter to this narrative if it's just completely not true. So, and that would make Trump look even worse if that was the case.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of pushing the black stick. So, or the not black stick, I should say.
It's just a miscalculation because you want to accuse them of playing the race card over and over and over again. And as soon as you start talking about race, that accusation, you lose that offense.
Right. Mike Mills for $5 says Trump said that Obama wasn't American because he was a black man with a foreign sounding name. Is that not racist? Did he say those exact words? I know that Trump obviously pushed birtherism. We talked about that earlier. And I do think that the pushing of birtherism, I mean, I don't know if it was racist, but definitely felt racist at the time when that was all going on. So, but I don't remember Trump saying those exact words. I don't think he said those exact words, but I do think Trump pushing birtherism was a huge mistake for Trump's reputation, and it does come off as pretty racist. So, Ben for $10 says, none of what happened matters over the past several months. We can't hold our attention span for more than 5 seconds. The election will be won within the last 2 weeks. I'm not gonna disagree with that. I'm not gonna disagree with that. I'll agree with that. That's probably true.
Right.
Jashu Calehero for 13 months says, finally paying my own way now. Thanks, JMac and Lucy Lumbug, for your largesse over the years. SA is team class. Well, thank you. Look at that. Made your own way now. 13 months. Over a year. Thanks so much. Ryan Awul for $10 says, biggest criticism for the border bill was $6 billion for Ukraine. It was mainly to refill tapped ammunition in the U.S. and new weapon contracts, but it could have been excluded to focus on the border. My understanding was, I could have swore that the Republicans were the ones that tie them together. Didn't they say that they refused to give any sort of budgeting bill to Ukraine unless there was some mechanism, some border bill involved? I could have swore they were the ones that asked for that in the first place. I could be mistaken. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember the details. I was trying to look up when Hillary Clinton made her basket of deplorables comment. And was it like 2 weeks before it?
2016.
Yeah, but was it like 2 weeks?
I mean, sorry. Oh, yeah, 2015, 2016, yeah.
Like most people look back at that election and say that that was a misstep that cost her the election, but I just don't know if it was 4 weeks before we voted or 2 weeks before we voted or a month before we voted. So that would go against the common belief that nothing matters until 2 weeks before the election, because that was a big event. Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of hyperbole. Like, obviously things matter, but though if I recall correctly, the Comey opening up the investigation into the Hillary emails thing was literally like 2 weeks from the election, wasn't
it? That was close. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
but
that one was real close. So,
but people look back and think the basket of deplorables comment was the one that really tipped the election. They don't think the email thing is what tipped the election.
I don't know. I've heard lots of people blame. It's kind of funny because Comey gets it from both ends. He's sort of been like held up now as like a Democrat hero because of the Trump thing. But before that, like the Democrats hated him because they literally were blaming Comey for that statement. He had the two statements. He had the one statement that he pissed off both left and right. And then he had the second written statement about how they were reopening the investigation because of the whole Anthony Weiner's wife, or I guess ex-wife now, laptop shenanigans. So, and that was like literally like a week or two before the election.
It looks like it was circa September 10th, 2016, because
that's pretty close.
Or September 9th.
Yeah, not 2 weeks.
Here's September 9th. Hillary Clinton expresses regret Saturday for comments in which he said half of Donald Trump supporters are deplorables.
Right.
So it's like a month before the election, 4 weeks.
Close.
Yeah.
Dog for 2 hours says, well, I didn't hear it. Next time, scream it. Okay, will do. JMac, thanks so much. I got follower Daddy JMac for the $20 says, been loving Twitter Adam as of late. Also seeing Pisco's tonal shift between nice guy streamer to Duncan McDunkster Twitter poster has been a hoot. Would be interesting seeing you guys talk to counterpoints as well. Yeah, I have no problem talking to counterpoints. I like counterpoints. It is funny to see, when I don't follow Pisco, but when I see his tweets, go through my timeline or he responded to me recently, is I guess our conversation, it made his like true colors reveal themselves. So, I guess I really got under his skin or something, because he was tweeting at me today. He was tweeting at me in all caps, just like screeching. And I just thought it was very funny and very interesting.
I think there might be a little bit of the syndrome thing going on from The Incredibles, where, he really looked up to you and saw you as kind of a father figure to him. Well, no, I'm serious, Sitch. I'm serious. Because look, that conversation took a really weird turn. Like I thought that conversation was going to be like, okay.
Pisco, go home.
I thought that conversation was just like, we're going to amicably go our separate ways. That's the way I walked into that conversation thinking.
Right.
And then once it became apparent that we were going to go our separate ways, like he just reached a level of desperation that was uncomfortable for me. And that's when I was like, okay, well, this is kind of dipping into like, for those of you who don't know, in The Incredibles, Syndrome is like the super fan of Mr. Incredible, but you don't like Mr. Incredible basically tells him he works alone, and so he doesn't want to have anything to do with this kid, and the kid it destroys him. It completely wrecks him. So he becomes his arch nemesis. And when I look at Twitter, I'm going, oh my God, he's way too enthusiastic about this, right? Way too enthusiastic. Like it's not, I mean, we're not huge streamers in all this. I mean, look, he's like, he can orbit Destiny. Destiny's like huge. Like, why is he even, like, why does he even care? Why is he even in this kind of, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's weird.
Guess he hurt his feelings.
Yeah. But anyway, it's funny. Look, and J-Mac likes it, so.
Right. Well, I like it. I think it's funny. But
I was going round and round with ContraPoint. I actually lumped ContraPoints in with Pisco and what's the other guy's name? Hunter or
Hutch?
Hutch, yeah. So I would call them the Connor Pisco Hutch coalition, and ContraPoints was very upset about it. Or Counterpoints. I was gonna mix.
Be nice to Connor's a good guy. Be nice to Connor.
I think Connor. I don't think Connor is. Look, I think Connor is an honest person. I think he doesn't really understand my arguments. I think he tends to straw man me, and like just the stuff he says gets, I don't think it's fair. So
okay, I haven't really been looking.
Look, it is what it is. I'm used to
Twitter, so
look. People on the internet are unfair. They're usually unfair maliciously. Like I do think. I haven't figured Hutch out yet. I don't know if Hutch is being unfair maliciously. I think I'm leaning in that direction. I think Pisco is being unfair maliciously. I'm not convinced Connor's being unfair maliciously. I think it's just thoughtlessness. So
okay. It was about so that's what it was about. It was about there's an individual who I'm sure you saw on social media who won in the Olympics for boxing, for female boxing. And the other person quit within 46 seconds and was like crying. And there was a lot of questions about whether the other person was trans because they look like a man. And some people were saying that, well, they can't be trans because apparently in Algeria, you're not allowed to be trans. And so there was a lot of questions that apparently they had failed a previous, some kind of previous gender test, and is kind of mixed reporting about whether the gender test tested for testosterone or was specifically testing for a Y chromosome. So, which leads us down the belief that this person probably has some kind of intersex condition, could possibly have a Y chromosome. And, I don't think it's fair that in a woman's competition that we can have like this nebulous question of a person's like medical background, because obviously it's not fair if a person, has testes that are like internal because they never drop because they have a, intersex condition. And so they went through a male puberty. And obviously that's not fair. That person is competing, in a female category like boxing. That seems kind of absurd. And it's absurd that we can't know that information, that like it all has to be secretive. So,
yeah.
Brian for $50. Thank you, Brian. Says, if interest rates are higher, then more people lock up their money in treasury bonds. If a person locks up $1 million for 2 years for 5% interest, then this would be deflationary because they're locking up $1 million in exchange for 50,000.
Yeah, but they're also getting huge interest payments that they can go out and spend in the economy.
Well, down the road, but it will cause.
It's called the interest income channel.
Right.
It's basically UBI for people with money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's well, first of all, I want to be nice, Brian. $50. That's quite an interest payment there.
Thank you.
So, but yes, I understand that. And look, this is the smart thing about treasury bonds and locking people's money up, incentivizing them to save instead of go out there and use that money to bid up prices and cause inflation. But there is the interest income channel. So, and anyone who has any money saved knows that those interest payments are money that you can spend. Go out and bid up prices.
Right. Well, also though, isn't if interest rates are really high, but you have a unique situation like we're coming out of COVID, so or we had, we were a few years ago. So people like businesses, like the whole point of interest rates, right, is supposed to be that it's supposed to get businesses to stop borrowing money and big institutions to stop borrowing money, right? Like that's the thought process.
That's the theory, yes. That's
Right.
a neoclassical theory that
Right.
high interest rates are going to stifle economic activity, right?
Right. But I guess the problem would be if it's like we're in a unique situation where we come out of COVID, and so there's this bizarre, artificial constraint on supply and production, all this other stuff, and all businesses are trying to open up again. So they're all going to essentially still be borrowing and spending money like crazy, but you have high interest rates. That's just gonna, I mean, wouldn't that just create more inflation?
Yeah, that's the thinking. That's exactly
Right.
the argument on the other side of it. They're like,
Right.
people are not going to say no to a business opportunity because the money, the loan is more expensive. What they're going to do is they're going to say yes to the business opportunity, and they're going to price the cost of doing business into the cost of the products, which just means the products are more expensive.
Right.
Yeah. This
Like,
is why what Trump said about the money costing more is perfect. That's exactly right.
mm-hmm. Like it is interesting because I know like in Florida, it's crazy the amount of new construction I see going up everywhere, even
Right.
though the price of land is so high. It's just everyone's buying up and developing like crazy.
Yeah.
So,
So if it costs them 5% to do the financing, they're just going to raise the prices by 5%, right?
right.
This is literally the theory that they have, that whatever the interest rate is the inflation rate. So if we
Mm-hmm.
have 5% interest rate, we're going to have 5% inflation. And there are economists that say we should just, since we want 2% inflation, we should just peg interest rates at 2% and forget about it.
Chele Bay Queen, thank you for the $10. Says we already know how to talk about race, quote race, without talking about race. Their gaslight is hot and their game face sucks. Don't follow regles de jour. Recess handball games are over. Back to class.
Well, thank you for the super chat. I'm not sure I
There you go.
understand it, but
The rules of the game in French.
Mhm.
So,
but
no, it's true. Well, I mean, it's obviously the black jobs thing is a cynical. It is a cynical thing. So, at least that thing is. Malik for $10 says, "I'll remember you guys when I become a world champion women's boxer next Olympics." Well, thank you, Malik. Appreciate it. You should make sure when you get the gold, you're wearing like a Sitch and Adams shirt. Okay, like don't represent your country, represent this show.
nice. Yeah, how is it just, I mean, was there an argument that because this person is intersex, they get to pick what sex they are and compete wherever they want?
It's unclear. We don't know. Like the only information we got, I believe, when I was reading the article from the French people, whatever the group is that makes the decision, was that they said, well, it says they're female in their passport. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, okay. I don't know. I don't think that's good enough. I think you need a little bit more information. If you have, they were literally not able to compete in past events under different rules and guidelines when they were doing gender tests. And now you're telling me they can. I think both the audience and the other competitors have a right to know like what that means and what that entails specifically. So
Cool.
Caleb for $5 says, Sitch, we can't ignore your fumble of the dumb Olympic story this morning. In her Wikipedia, it states she's not transgender. I don't. How did I fumble the dumb Olympic story? I said Olympics has become an episode of South Park. I mean, I guess you could say, okay, well, she's not trans, she's intersex, but if you think that's a fumble, I think you're being very sensitive about something that's kind of a distinction without a difference. Like, on a categorical level, why would it matter whether the person is trans and went through male puberty versus someone is intersex and went through male puberty? Why would that make any difference whatsoever? It doesn't to me. So,
right.
And it does feel like 100%. I don't know if I'm not talking about you, Caleb, but it feels like 100% cope on Twitter when all people are like, oh my God, she's not trans, she's not trans, she's not trans. It's like, okay, but if you're not trans, but you have the same quality of being trans that makes it unfair, which is going through male puberty, then it doesn't matter at all. So seems like a cope spiral from the left. Depressed Canadian for 10 Canadian says, asking if someone is black enough to comes down. Asking if someone is, quote, black enough comes down to racist stereotypes, whether they behave or appear as a typical. John McWhorter has spent his career fighting this in both the white and black community. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I said earlier, is that would be the context where it would be racist. You're saying like, oh, you're not black because you don't have some sort of quality to you. That would be like the racist version of it. Where Trump,
what is that quality?
Right, I don't know. That'd be the question, right? It'd be like the way you look or
Tardiness.
talk or act or something. Yeah, some racist stereotype. But I mean, with Trump, he wasn't. Even though it comes across that way, and he shouldn't have said it. That's not really what he meant. What he meant was that she wasn't self-identifying as black until it served her politically. So
right, yeah.
Chile Bay Queen, thanks so much for joining the Free Will Seekers.
Welcome,
Brian. Thank you for the next $50.
Another one. Look at
Thank
this.
you so much, Brian.
Coming back.
The interest payments will always be less than the locked money in the USA. Also, if interest rates are higher, it means more people are locking up their money and spending less, meaning less demand, higher costs. Loves your stream. Here's another $50. Well, thank you so much. It's very generous of you.
Yes. I do. The logic behind selling treasury bonds, I think, is great. Like, the government has overspent, and that money, that spending, it goes directly into the economy, so it can bid up prices. But if you turn that money into treasury bonds to lock it up, you are basically incentivizing people not to spend and bid up prices. So that does fight inflation, obviously. But once you reach a tipping point where you're at a $32 trillion deficit, it's like those interest payments are so big, it's just like a fire hose of cash back into the economy.
Right. Arithmus for $2 says, I think the solution for police is not blanket immunity, but maybe an independent body that can be petitioned by a DA to review and authorize prosecution on a case-by-case basis, a non-political layer between DAs and police. Maybe. I mean, I like that.
Something has to be done about it.
Yeah. Arithmus for no $2 says, Adam, if a job category is statistically held disproportionately by black people and illegal immigrants are statistically taking those jobs, and I think it's fair to say that they are taking black jobs, status is irrelevant.
Yeah, look, I think it's fair, and people do talk about it. Obviously, they're not going to let Trump talk about it because they're going to categorize it as racism. So,
right.
It's a completely unfair playing field, but there's lots in life that's unfair, right? This is like the art of war. You've got to pick where you're going to fight.
Right.
Yeah. In the art of war, he lays out like all the different kind of terrain that you can fight on and which one you should fight on and which one you should not fight on and which position you should fight in. Stuff's awesome. Yeah. It's fighting on the race terrain is just, it totally favors the left.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Sulla for $2 says, on quote, cat ladies, my mom said, quote, I have kids and don't care about your futures. You're on your own. I care about my needs now. Wow. Okay. There you go. I also told her about custodial voting and she's called it, quote, fucking stupid. I agree. Sorry, Adam. Oh, there you go.
Look, that's That is what people generally say. I get it. Most people are selfish. They want more voting power for themselves. The way that I conceptualize voting is you're basically polling people on their particular political interests. And I mean political interests in like share of resources and stuff like that, taxes, real bread and butter type stuff. And if you have a huge body of people that just their political interest is not being expressed or being expressed by other people, then they're at a disadvantage for their share of resources. So you're basically cutting them out. And most people don't conceptualize voting this way. Most people conceptualize voting as like a committee is going to get together and decide the direction of the nation. Where I consider voting more like a bunch of people are going to get together and decide how they're going to split up the productive spoils of society. And when you think of it that way, obviously, if people are not at the table, you're not going to include them in the productive spoils of society, right? You're going to be like, oh, well, let's just forget about those guys' share. Let's focus on our share, us here at the table, right? So when you have children, obviously their parents can sit at the table and advocate for a larger share because they have kids sitting off to the side here who are not included. But I'm just saying, why are we doing that? Why don't we just let the parents have political interest at the table in advocating the spoils of our political system in their kids' interests? Sitch, and I don't want to mischaracterize your argument, but your argument is kind of, well, the other people at the table will consider the children. And I'm like, well, will they really? Probably not.
I mean, most people consider children because a lot of people have children. So there's that. But I think the element of it is that I understand that this is like how you view voting, but not everyone views voting. And I don't think
but there is a truth of the world, though.
There is an element of what you're saying that is true, but that's not like the objective. That's not the objective only way to view what voting is and what it represents.
Yeah, but what is the way that I'm viewing it because I believe that is like, that's how voting actually works. That's the truth of how the system functions.
I think there's elements of that, but I mean, most people view it, and I think just on a literal level, it is you are voting for people to make judgments about how to run your society.
Based on how those things are going to affect you personally.
Yeah, based on what policies they claim they want to put into practice that you think will benefit you or make the world a better place. Yeah.
Benefit you or your kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if there is a policy that's going to benefit childless people or benefit people with kids, and the childless people have more votes because the kids aren't being considered politically, then obviously the childless people are going to win on that policy.
It doesn't seem to me, and this is purely on a vibe here, it doesn't seem to me that in America that families and people that have children are not being represented in politics. It kind of feels like the opposite. It feels like usually politicians pander specifically to families and children's specifically. So I don't feel like there's some sort of dearth of representation for children and families currently in America. Maybe that'll change in the future, but not right now.
I disagree, and I think the issue that I think would see the most transformation if custodial voting became a thing is like school vouchers. I think if you all of a sudden included all of the people who were using the schools, the kids, in that political assessment, I think we'd get a much better education system. Because that is where it's tangibly
right.
The interests of the people who don't have kids and the interests of the people who have kids are just, tangibly in conflict.
Yeah, but the school voucher thing, it's not like the school voucher thing is not a situation where people that like everyone that has kids wants it. Everyone that doesn't have kids doesn't want to pay for it. The situation where it's just strictly left, right, Democrat versus Republican divide.
Because they're representing the interests of the people.
Well, no, but I mean, like Democrats with children overwhelmingly, I assume, unless there's new polls that suggest otherwise. My understanding is that Democrats, even Democrats with children, are more against school vouchers and are more in favor of just providing additional funding or requirements for public schools.
Right.
So, anyways.
Look, I don't know I mean, obviously you're judging it on a completely different metric than whether or not the people have kids. I mean, I would separate it up into how Republicans with kids, like the policy will tangibly affect people. So they would be voting on how that policy tangibly affected them.
What I'm saying is, like, I don't know the answer to the question. Like, if you gave if you did this thing where like you had the custodial voting, I have no clue whether that's going to give Democrats more votes or Republicans more votes. I don't know the answer to that question.
But look, you're assuming.
Wait. So all I'm saying is that you had said that you think if this custodial voting came into practice, like student vouchers or school vouchers would come into play because overwhelmingly people with kids who would vote and have these extra votes want it. And I'm saying I don't know if that's the case because that's the student voucher thing. My understanding, unless there's new polling on it, is that it's primarily also divided along the left-right Democrat-Republican divide. So you'd have the same split. That's all I was saying.
People who are not tangibly affected by the policy are going to default to whatever the party wants. They're going to default to partisanship. People who are tangibly affected by the policy will tend to vote, in line with whether or not the policy helps them or not, regardless of party affiliation. So that's my argument. I'm saying that the people who are tangibly affected by the policy, they may have 3 kids in school, but they're only 2 votes at home, right? If all of a sudden they become 5 votes, they have a much bigger say in how that policy changes. Like then the partisan thing becomes less of an issue because it's actually an issue that touches them directly.
I understand.
I mean, you agree that people default to partisanship because they don't really know how the policy is going to affect them, right?
Well, yes and no. I don't know. As I said, I don't know unless there could be some new shift in polling where Democrats are now in favor of student vouchers because they've waited too long for the public schools to be fixed and it hasn't accomplished that. I don't know if that's the case or not. But
Right.
historically, I'm saying is that Democrats, even Democrats with children who would benefit from student vouchers, have historically been against student vouchers because the issue was successfully framed as by both the left and the right as student vouchers exist to basically give kids an ability to go to Christian religious schools. And that was kind of the way it's been framed for like 20 years. Now, It's possible that framing has kind of fallen off and now Democrats are finally in favor of it. I don't know, but that was my only point.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and my point is just that the policies that are like conceptualizing voting as this quid pro quo thing is more effective and truer. So,
okay. Dr. Diddler for $2 says, interesting to make the syndrome comparison. One aspect of his story is that Mr. Incredible tells him to go home after his meddling lets Bon Voyage get away, which Buddy completely forgets when he's retelling the story. Very true. That was a very brilliant aspect of this storytelling and how, the sort of self-serving bias, the confirmation bias that people have, they leave out that little bit of information when they're telling their side of the story about how they fucked up.
Incredibles is just a near perfect movie. Yeah.
Yes. The first one, second one, unfortunately, is kind of weak.
It's okay. Yeah, but
Caleb for $5 says, is it the concern troll that males are transitioning so they can get wins easier? Seems like you jumped onto the right-wing narrative that she is transgender. Well, I think that's sort of a weird assumption that you made, Caleb. My position is not that males are transitioning to get W's easier. I mean, I think that's possible, but that was not my implication whatsoever. I guess I can understand how you'd see that because that was sort of like the joke in South Park. I didn't mean it in that way. I just meant it was like a funny thing where you have a person who is male, who seems to be male, very clearly seems to be like has a very male physique, literally beating up a woman in a boxing match. That's the only extent of the comparison to South Park I thought of in my mind when I made that tweet. So it's not a concern troll even remotely. I think we do have a serious issue with both transgender women who have gone through male puberty and intersex athletes who have also gone through male puberty participating in women's sports, and I don't think it's fair whatsoever. So I don't see how that's a concern, troll.
This picture, it's impossible. So obviously the one in red is the intersex person, and the woman in blue.
Presumably, because we don't know, because we're not allowed, like,
Presumably,
they won't tell us, right?
Gotcha.
So,
But it's just, you look at these body types, it's just, come on.
yeah. I know.
Like, men's bodies are X's, like they have that skinny waist and broad shoulders. Women's bodies are hourglasses. It's like, geez, give me a break here. Give me a break.
I mean, they definitely, like, and Caleb, I don't know. I mean, if you're fine with individuals that have potentially testes, internal or external, going through male puberty, beating up women in a boxing match, I just vehemently disagree with that worldview. I don't see how that's a concern, troll. So, and it's funny because I think even Brianna Wu basically tweeted out something that was very similar to that today. So it's not a good issue. Stack for $5 says, do children get counted for the purpose of representation or only adults? If the former, I don't think the word custodial voting affects much.
Children do get counted for the purpose of representation from the moment they're born.
Currently, yes. That was what the question was.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, they do. As a whole person,
yes.
Not 3/5 of a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't get whole person status when they turn 18. And I still, like, it's just, you guys got to stop doing the 3/5 thing, because it drags racism into this argument in some weird way that is just non-productive and frankly dishonest. So
Stug for another $2 says, it probably means more for state politics though.
Because, well, it is like the states that have more kids obviously have more representatives in Congress, which affects voting on legislation in Washington, right? Obviously, smaller states that have 2 representatives against big states that have like 40 representatives. Obviously, the bigger states have more political power in Congress.
Right.
So that's why they count the children. They want that political power. They just don't want the parents to have the ability to express that political power. The representatives want to express that political power for you. Like, theoretically, the representative is representing the interests of the parents anyway. But I just think in local elections where it really matters, it'd be so useful. Useful for parents.
Depressed Canadian for 5 Canadian says The Simpsons did this family versus childless people topic in the episode Marge versus singles, seniors, childless couples, and teens and gays. Well, there you go. I didn't see that episode, but Simpsons did everything, right? Chile Bay Queen for $5. Thank you. Says, just saying, before games need players. Losers weep. Trust left the building. Kicking it with Elvis. Haha. Thanks, Sitch and Adam. S-Class is the best. A-Class. Aw. Heart. Well, wow. Thank you. Look at that. 10th ever super chat.
Sweet.
Jacob Membrino for 11 months. Thank you. Says, have y'all seen Brett Weinstein's video about how 3 shooters were involved in the Pennsylvania event? I haven't seen it. I think it's kind of sad if Brett's gone down that pathway. So that is unfortunate if that's the case.
Yeah.
I did see that there was new video. I don't know if you saw, there's like new video from an angle where it's kind of crazy. You can see the crooks like
shooter?
crawling. Yeah, like on the rooftop.
Wow.
From like a different angle. So
somebody was behind Trump filming. I was kind of thinking that would surface sooner or later, right?
It was like a behind diagonal shot of him. And even though it's a different vantage point from where the counter snipers were, I know they said there was a tree in the way, but it seemed like if you could see it from this lower vantage point, I would assume you could see it from a higher vantage point, unless that tree was really blocking line of sight. So Let's see, where was I? Depressed Canadian for 5 Canadian. Oh wait, no, wait, I skipped something. Oh, Stug for $5 says also the census is every 10 years. So under that framework, many children become adults in between. So I don't know how that interacts with custodial voting. Well, I guess they'd have to, if you did custodial voting, you just have to do something different to, I guess, account for that.
People did ask about like how votes would be split if you had one kid in joint custody. I think those are interesting questions. Like I wouldn't mind doing like half a vote. Each parent gets half a vote, but then you have to include half votes into the voting system, which would be a giant headache. Like they would have to have their own ballot, right?
Yeah, you couldn't do that. You'd have to just figure out some way to split the vote. I mean, to give one person the vote. I guess to answer the questions, like what you'd have to do is that, I mean, it'd be a little more complicated, but you'd have to, when you sign up to vote in the first place, when you get 18, you'd have to put, I guess, like your parents or whoever your parent is that has the vote's name on it, so they could take that person's extra vote away, right? There had to be some way of identifying that. So
no, the parent would register the child as a custodial, and when they turned 18, the registration would just go over to them.
Or I guess actually, I mean, I guess it should just be automatic. Like it could automatically.
Yeah, it would automatically go over to them. Yeah.
So I guess maybe you wouldn't even have to do that. So
Press Canadian. I mean, it's like everyone wants to argue these edge cases too. They always want to say like, "Oh, Octomom gets 19 votes." Yeah, Octomom gets 19 votes or whatever. Right. But like throwing out like the vast majority of people who have like one kid, two kids, who this would, be advantageous for at the polling place because Octomom gets 9 votes or whatever. It's ridiculous. It's basically like saying, just because we make murder illegal doesn't mean people are going to stop murdering people. So we should just make murder okay then. No. I mean, we can do policy changes and worry about the fringe. Like the fringe cases are not really that. They're not going to, Octomom is not going to decide an election, right, Sitch?
No.
Yeah. So
whatever. I really just don't care about this subject matter. I just want to move past it.
You don't care about it because it doesn't affect you, which I understand.
I just don't think it's that interesting. Like we've talked about it to death. Like I just don't.
Well, then why are there 19 super chats on it if it's not?
I guess you're right. I guess ignore
me. Like you're the only one that doesn't seem interested in this. Sitch.
Okay, that's true. That's fair. Someone said that Jacob Membrino for $5 says the reputation of Brett's guest is unquestionable and the ballistics evidence speaks for itself. Watch the video. It's not conspiracy rich theory. Okay, I'll check it out. I am highly biasedly skeptical against it, but I'll give it a shot. So is it on his YouTube channel? Is it? Because I don't see it on his YouTube channel. Oh, send me a link on Twitter or something. Depressed Canadian for 5 Canadian says the boxer is biologically male with a DSD condition who is incorrectly sexed as female. He's not trans, he's male. Yeah, I saw that some people were saying that on Twitter. I don't know every single DSD condition, obviously, and what each one entails. So that I guess it's somewhat speculative. But yeah, if they have testes, whether internal or external, that produce sperm, they would be categorized as male biologically. So
how does that even work? I mean, that's so.
It's a weird it's a weird condition. There's that condition. There's some weird condition where like you could be male, but your testosterone doesn't change into androgen or whatever the other thing is. And so when you're like a baby, so you don't develop the external male sex characteristics, even though you're male with a Y chromosome. There's all sorts of like weird ways that this can manifest.
Do people with this condition have a vagina that they themselves ejaculate into? Is that
what? What do you mean? How do you ejaculate into your own vagina?
Well, they have testicles that are inside the body, right? So the testicles produce sperm ejaculate, right?
Oh, I don't know if they. Yeah, I'd have no clue how any of that works. If it actually produces like and is ejaculable or what? I have no clue. So
it's just so
it's very
so
strange. It's very strange and weird to think about. Yeah. Select for $5 says, thank you. Says, I wasn't doing a 3/5 thing. I was saying that if they're already counted for representation, then I'm not sure custodial voting changes much.
Not if you're doing the one ones thing. The people that are doing the 3/5 thing are doing it because of the 3/5 compromise. That's the only reason to do it.
Right. Well, I
They're
mean,
basically saying
Sleg didn't make that joke. That was someone else.
The implicit argument is that this is as stupid as the 3/5 compromise was when in the racist South. And it was to give political power to slave owners. It's just, I see it as dishonest, but.
Okay. Caleb for $10. Thank you, Caleb. Says, so Iman could be born a woman and you'd say, whatever this emoji is that you're putting in, it doesn't show up in the super chat. So
yeah.
And you'd say, actually, it's her. What? Wait. So Iman's the person we're talking about. Could be born a woman, and you'd say, actually, it's her that has to be disadvantaged and fight with men based on us not knowing if she has balls or she could not bother competing. I mean, I didn't say that. I literally have no clue how you heard what I said and came over with that. What I said was, if you're born with one of these intersex conditions, so that you literally have testicles, okay, inside your body that make you go through male puberty, you are biologically a man, okay? Even if you are misidentified as a woman because you don't have a penis or functioning external genitalia, you are still literally biologically a man. You went through male puberty. And yes, I would say if that is that, we don't know if that's the case, but somebody knows if that's the case or not. They should know if that's the case. They've done supposedly this gender testing, and someone even claimed they had a Y chromosome or not. And if that is the case, and they have a Y chromosome or they have internal testes and went through male puberty, they should not be able to compete in women's boxing. I'm sorry. If they want to compete, they'll have to compete against men. I think that's pretty fucking reasonable.
And there's lots of men that are disadvantaged by having to compete with other men because they're smaller than those other men, right?
Right.
I mean, geez.
Jacob Membrino for $5 says the reputation. Oh, another one. Sorry, I said your name wrong. Shell B Queen. Thank you for $2. Says, I agree. Brett is solid. Yes, watch the video. I'll check it out. Meadow Works 411.90 for $5 says, did you see Dev's video on the Olympics Passover thing? He thinks the right is overacting a bit and that there's not much evidence to judge either way. I did not see that video. I mean, whether you think they're overacting or not is in the eye of the beholder. I thought it was gross, obviously. Oh, I found the Brett Weinstein video. You don't have to send a link to me. But yeah, I mean, I think it was gross. I think people are overreacting. I think they're not overreacting. I think people are reacting for two reasons. One, because it is offensive, but two, it's just people are sick of the unfairness. They're sick of the one-sided nature of this all about why is it that, one group of people, one political side, one religious, group gets like shit on constantly and is totally acceptable, and everyone else is off limits. And I think that's kind of what is affecting people. And also, people look at this stuff through the larger lens of the culture war. And so this is seen as just another example of like weirdo leftist culture war, sinking its little claws, its little meat hooks into some other institution like the Olympics. And so I think that's sort of also intuitively what's going on. And I think you have to consider all that. So I don't think it was an overreaction.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways.
Sounds good. I looked
up
the Brett video too. I should study Brett more because Brett, I have the same problem as Brett.
What's that?
Things that I say on the face of them seem absurd. And Brett, I always think this, like this 3 shooters thing seems absurd. But then you watch his videos and you're like, oh yeah, this is a great argument. Totally coherent, totally cogent, not conspiracy brained at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll watch it. I'll give it a good college honest try, see what I think. So
right. Don't be biased.
But I mean, I already am biased against it, so that's definitely an uphill battle. But
Yeah, because of the conspiracy angle of it.
yeah, because it just also, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Anyway.
But he's going to make it make sense to you.
Maybe.
All right. Great show, man. This was awesome.
That's right. Anyway, thank you all
feedback.
Thank you all for coming.
No, that's Sunday.
Thank you all for your incredibly generous donations. We'll see you Sunday. We won't be streaming tomorrow, so see you Sunday.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.